Hey froggy friends, Kirostyle here. Welcome to my stream. Thank you so much for coming by today. Hope you guys are all doing well. Psycho Reaper, congratulations on being first. Ash, welcome in. Luke, it's good to see you. Oh, thank you for the frogs. Oh, thank you for the stretch. Kieran, welcome in. Danger, it's good to see you. Cole, welcome. Ryugen, thank you so much for the sub. I really appreciate it. Hello. Thank you for the 7 months. That's awesome. Hope you're doing well today, Ryugen. So, today it is finally time for me to talk about my trip to Australia, which I took last month. And Kieran, thank you so much for the bits. I really appreciate it. Thank you. I spent all day preparing for this stream. Like, I locked in. I was going to prepare all throughout the last week, and I got kind of lazy, and I was like, okay, I'll just do it on the day of. I have plenty of time, but because I severely underestimated the number of photos I took. I took so many photos. I needed to organize them, pick out which ones I want to show, which ones are worth showing, organize them and group them based on like which order I want to show them. Then I went in and then I edited them. So especially for the ones that might have people in the background, I went and blurred people's faces and did some light color editing. Not too much, didn't have time for that. Then put together the slideshow, and then I had to make the thumbnail, and then I had tried to make the slideshow fancy, and then halfway through I just gave up and just started throwing pictures onto the screen. And then I was like, oh, I'm gonna be late for stream. I better make an announcement and say I'm gonna be like an hour late because I'm still putting together the slideshow. But we're here, and I'm finally ready to talk about my trip. There's a lot to say, and I'll try to be succinct about it, but it was a really fun trip. And Gora, welcome in. Thank you so much for coming by. Yeah, it takes way longer than I thought preparing the PowerPoint. Like, when I looked at the number of photos I took, I didn't think I took that many. I took, like, 1,100 photos. I did not think I took that many. Most of it was of wildlife and food. And I was like, oh, that's a lot of photos that I gotta sift through. And then when I was trying to pick through like the slideshow templates, I had such a hard time just finding one that was just easy to just plop in photos. So eventually I just had to like pick a random template and then just start editing it to my preferences. And I was like, oh, this is gonna take a little bit longer than I thought. I thought about reusing the one I used for my Los Angeles trip, but then I was like, I should do something different. So it's not the same. And I was like, oh, this is taking longer than I figured. And then I was like, oh, I need to find I need to find a map of Australia. Oh, quick, I need to find a picture of this because I want to talk about it. So I had to go find pictures for additional things. So it was definitely more than I thought, and I definitely should have been doing more of it this week. But whatever. So yeah, I went to Australia last month. I was gone for about 2.5 weeks. Although, if you consider the travel time, it was basically 2 weeks, and then like half a week of just flying. So I kept saying that I was gone for like 3 weeks, but it was, 2.5 weeks, and then actually only about 2 weeks, just under 2 weeks actually there. And then I also made a couple stops along the way and on the way back to visit some people. So Australia was not the only place I visited, but it's the only place I'm going to be talking about because the other places would just hang out with people. As a kid, my family used to travel a lot. We used to go to a lot of different countries, and it was cool seeing the world. But now that I'm older and, planning my own trips and stuff, it's not that I don't want to sightsee, but a lot of times when I go places, it's because I want to go see someone. Especially since a lot of my friends are, from around the world because of the internet. So nowadays, a lot of my travels are mostly about visiting people, which means that I usually don't do like recap slideshows and talk about them unless there's something really interesting to talk about, like visiting a new country, or like when I went to visit Kieran in Los Angeles, and because he is also a VTuber, so it made sense to kind of document that together. But when I'm visiting my non-VTuber or, non-internet friends or my internet friends, those just aren't things usually worth talking about. So the reason why I went to Australia was because one of my friends is getting married. And that friend I have known since high school. We went to university together, and then he moved down to Australia for medical school and met his wife there, and they got married. So they invited a bunch of, their close friends, which included me and a few other people. So we all headed down together to Australia for like a trip together, which was really fun. So the main reason why we were there was for the wedding, but of course, none of us have been to Australia before, so it was a good chance to just go and see, what's there. So let's talk about. Actually, here I'll talk about. First, I want to talk about like major cultural differences between what I found here in North America, specifically Canada, and down there in Australia. Now, most things are the same. Like, the general things are the same. And, of course, they speak English, so you don't have to worry about that. But there's a lot of, like, little things that you got to be aware of. Not just, like, lingo, but also just, like, in general. Also, because they're, south of the equator, right now, it's their winter. So it was actually a really good time to go because it's not that hot. It's only about 15 to 22 degrees Celsius. For you Fahrenheiters, that's like 59 to 72 degrees Fahrenheit, which to me, that's really nice weather. It's like not too hot, it's not too cold, it's perfect weather. So I liked it. A lot of locals there, of course, are wearing their jackets and bundled up and stuff like that too, which I thought was hilarious because I was just, in my shorts and t-shirt because it was like, wow, right? But I do know that if you go there during our winter, it's really hot down there. So if you go during their actual summer, it is very, very hot. So I am so glad I went during their winter, which is basically just a mild summer for us. Yes, indeed, they do call sandals thongs down there. One of my coworkers was actually like, you should go get some thongs while you're down there because I heard of a company that makes really good sandals that is Australian, and if you get them there, it's like really cheap, and if you import them, then it's like super expensive. And I was like, well, I don't care about sandals, so but good to know. Good to know. Also, the time difference, of course, threw me off. Luckily, my phone was able to keep me apprised of that. When I was, messaging people back home or talking to people on Discord, and it was like, oh yeah, I gotta remember that right now it's a different time for them compared to usual when I'm used to talking to them. So let's talk about a few things. So first of all, this picture of the McDonald's here, I took a picture of myself. I thought it was so funny because me and my friend walked by and we were like, wait a second, like we were wondering if there's McDonald's has any special Australian items. They don't, but we saw the picture and we saw this picture of like a purple burger and we're like, what is that? Is it like an ube burger or something? Is that special? And it turns out it's just the colors on their screen were malfunctioning. But I thought that was kind of funny. Down there, they call McDonald's Macca's. So a lot of them would just say Macca's. Do you want to go to the Macca's? Stop by the Macca's. And we're like, what the heck is a Macca's? Hey, Kirist, welcome to the stream. Yes, exactly. I thought it was maybe like a Grimace Burger thing. Because I know the Grimace Burger trend came by, and I actually didn't have a chance to try it because they didn't have it here where I am. So I thought that maybe they had like a Grimace promotion. But it turns out it's just a screen malfunction. But yeah, they call McDonald's Macca's down there, and it's like it's not just a slang term; it's like an official term. Like McDonald's will use the word Macca's on their branding and stuff, right? Yeah, the Grimace Shake. Yeah, they have like the McDonald's. They called it Macca's down there, and we're like, oh, like it's not just a nickname. They actually use it in their branding and stuff. And I think we kind of likened it to like, because like here we might. Some people call it like Mickey D's, for example. I've heard people say that. But it's not like McDonald's officially brands themselves as Mickey D's. So I think I kind of liken it more to like Tim Hortons. Because here, Tim Hortons, a lot of people just call it Timmy's. And Tim Hortons will use the word Timmy's in their branding. So it's like an official, word, right? So that's just kind of interesting. Now, in the middle here, you have this chicken thing. It's not a chicken. It's called an ibis. It's a type of bird. They have a long beak, and they're everywhere. Like, they are just walking around, eating food, picking off food everywhere you go. And, there's always signs that say, don't feed the ibis. And a lot of places have outdoor eating establishments, and there's signs like watch out for the ibis. Do not feed the ibis. Watch out for the ibis because they're everywhere. And the locals call them bin chickens. So my friend's like, "Oh, have you seen the bin chickens yet?" I'm like, "What's a bin chicken?" And they're called bin chickens because with their long beaks, they'll just swoop down and then start digging through bins and stuff. So they're just called like bin chickens, basically. Yeah, it's kind of like they're equivalent to like geese or pigeons or seagulls, but they're big. Like they're actually pretty big. Hey, Psycho Reaper, welcome to the stream. Thank you so much for stopping by. Thank you so much for the raid. Hope you're doing well. Let me write you a shout out. Please go join us in following our friend Psycho Reaper, our friendly neighborhood necromancer, who plays all sorts of different games. Hope you had a good time with your stream. Thank you so much for dropping by. Of course, we're talking about our trip, so feel free to sit back and relax or go take care of yourself after your stream. Yeah, so we have bin chickens as well. Other terms that they use a little bit differently than us, or that words that they use more commonly than us. For one thing, they call washrooms toilets there. So like here, usually you'll say like washroom, restroom, bathroom, right? But there they just straight up call them toilets, which of course, like you make sense. Like you hear it and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, they're talking about the washroom. But the thing is that if you go down there to like a restaurant or something like that, and you say, where's the washroom? They'll look at you and be like, washroom? Like, what are you talking about? What's a washroom? And you'd be like, where's the toilet? And they'll be like, oh, okay, like it's over there. Like they don't even, like a lot of them will look at you funny if you say the word washroom, restroom, because to them, they just call it the toilet, right? Which I thought was kind of interesting. Speaking of washrooms, this picture in the bottom right here, you're probably wondering what it is. I noticed that every single time I went to a person's house, all their washrooms had elevated floors. So like the washroom floor would be a bit higher than the floor of the rest of the house or building or apartment. And basically it'd be really easy to stub your toe on it when you're not being careful because you're not expecting it. I don't know about you, but where I'm from, washrooms generally don't all have elevated floors. And so I was fine with it, but one of my friends could not get used to it and kept like stubbing his toe and tripping over it until we got used to it. But I just found it really interesting because it wasn't just a one location, two location thing. It was like everywhere has their washrooms like that. Hey, Gambear, welcome to the stream. Thank you so much for following me and being a froggy friend. Welcome in. Other words that they use differently, or not differently, but less commonly. Like here, when we say takeout container, right? Takeout, or we say I want this to go. But for them, they say takeaway. Do you want a takeaway container? Do you want this as takeaway? So if you ask them for a to-go container or a takeout container, they'll look at you funny and be like, I don't know what that is. And then you say takeaway container, and they'll be like, yes, a takeaway container. They'll also use the word lollies to refer to candies. So like when I think of lollies, right, it's like lollipop. But for them, the word lollies just means candies. So they say lollies, or you go to the lolly shop instead of the candy shop, which I found was interesting. A lot of the restaurants also, they call their appetizers entrees. So they have entrees, and then they have mains. And like for me, an entree is a main, right? And I know there's like, that vastly differs depending on where you go. But just me personally, like they don't use the word appetizers, they call them entrees. Which to me didn't make sense at first until I realized like what it really meant. Avocado is very common there, like avocado on toast, for example, but they everywhere just calls it avo. They'll always abbreviate it. It doesn't matter what they're talking about, whether it be on toast or whether it just be in something else. They'll just say avo. And at first it was like, avo. Oh, avocado. Like for me, like it makes sense, but I usually don't see it written. It's more like something people just say, but they just write it out like that all the time. Traffic circles, they call roundabouts, which again, still makes sense to me, but it's not usually the word that I say for it, but they call them roundabouts. And boy, man, do they love their roundabouts. That world is roundabout central. If you're driving down there, I hope you love traffic circles because they have so many traffic circles everywhere you go. It's crazy. Yeah. What else? What else? Oh yeah. So there were so many people on bikes there, which makes sense because you can bike year round there. It's not like they have a real winter. And then there were so many people on bikes with the Uber Eats things. Like there were so many people with Uber Eats delivery things everywhere, but on bikes, which again is kind of new for me because most of the time those people drive cars. And I guess it's because a lot of the places we went are very bike friendly cities. Everything's kind of close together. There's bike paths everywhere. It's very like bike forward. And then there's a lot of those like rental bikes, like the electric bikes that you can just, you know, rent and then use the shared helmet, which I would not do personally, but there's a lot of them. Hey Fate, welcome to the stream. Thank you so much for calling Kirby. Um, Also down there, they drive on the left side of the road, and I've been to countries where they drive on the left side of the road. But it's a good thing I didn't drive here in Australia. A couple of my friends did rent cars and drive here, and it was a kind of a nightmare for them because it's like the combination of driving on the left side and having like a million traffic circles everywhere takes a lot of getting used to. Not only that, but I find that their intersections in general are just really confusing. Because normally, at least what I'm used to, when you have an intersection, right, you have the lights that tell you to, you know, for one way of traffic to go, and then you have a light that tells the other way of traffic to go, and then you might have like a left turn signal, for example. But here, it was almost like there were like 8 different combinations or permutations of lights that could exist in a single like traffic stop. Like there'd just be like there's like a light for this specific lane to turn this way, but there's a light for this specific lane to turn this way, but there's a light for this specific lane to turn this way. So as a result, whenever you're at like a traffic light, it takes forever if you don't catch it on the green. You're waiting there for a really long time because you have to wait for like 7 different cycles of different lights to go through before you get a chance to actually go. So it takes a really long time. Not just that, but there, pedestrians do not have the right of way, which is, I know a lot of other places, especially in Asia, also do that, but it's very kind of different seeing that with here because like everything else you would think is kind of similar. So in other words, if you're about to cross the street, right, you stand there, you look at the street, right, you kind of, you know, look both ways. The cars will stop for you. Here they don't do that. The cars just zoom right by. They will not stop for you. You will get run over if you just start crossing the street. You have to like find an opening in the traffic and then quickly make your way across, which is really hard if there's a lot of traffic at the time. And it really depends on the time of day. Or you have to actually go find a crosswalk, which may or may not exist at every single intersection or traffic light. Furthermore, sometimes the crosswalks will only exist on like, for example, 3 sides of the intersection. So let's say I want to go, you know, from one side of the intersection to the other, but there's no crosswalk. Then I have to go through the 3 other crosswalks. I have to go like right, forward, left just to get where I want to go, or, you know, left, forward, right. Which in other words, it means you have to wait for 3 crossing lights in order to get to your destination, even though you only want to cross one street. And like the traffic lights, there's so many different permutations. You're waiting forever. It takes so long to walk from one side of the street to the other if you're trying to use lights and there isn't a direct light. It's kind of annoying. I wouldn't say it's very pedestrian friendly. Even though a lot of signs do say pedestrians technically have the right of way, it's like no one actually obeys that law. Like we'll see signs that will be like, please yield to pedestrians, but no one actually does it there. So you got to be careful. Also, if you want to cross, right? If you want to cross the street at the intersection, you have to press the button on the pole, right? Which, you know, I've seen that before, obviously. But here, it's like if you press the button on the pole and then you wait, when it turns to walk, if you take like 1 step into that intersection, about 1 second later, that walk signal will turn into a flashing red. So in other words, if you don't start crossing the street immediately when the light turns to walk, you won't make it. So then you have to wait for the next light. It's very rushed. It's very like, go, 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 be careful. You don't want to get hit by a car. And not only that, but you got to look the other way because they're driving on the left side of the road, which is, again, a bit different than what you might be used to, right? So a lot of things about walking and traffic and crossing the street and pedestrians there that you kind of just have to get used to. Um, that I thought was kind of interesting. Now, a lot of people ask me if, like down there, what kind of cuisine do they have? What kind of food do they have? And Australia is like a melting pot, just like the United States and Canada. It's just a mishmash of different types of cultures. So I wouldn't say there's one particular type of cuisine. For example, it's just a lot of different types of cuisine. Of course, most places are along the coast, so you do get good seafood, I would say. But it's not like they have like a signature dish or anything like that. A lot of people ask me about like, oh, were they serving kangaroo meat down there? And kangaroo meat was not easy to come by. We found like one food truck that was selling it, and that was it. It wasn't served in any restaurants or anything. We did see some at the supermarket, but I kind of liken it to like if you go to like the prairies in Canada, right? When you think of the prairies, you might think of like bison or buffalo because they talk about buffalo a lot. But if you actually go there, not very many places serve bison. You have to go to like a specialty place or like a rural place and actually look for it. Even though the prairies are known for their bison, it's not like a common meat. I would say it's kangaroos are kind of like that, right? In general, food is expensive down there. Like, even if you consider the dollar conversion, it's pretty expensive down there. Now, the Australian dollar is slightly weaker than the Canadian dollar, so they're almost on par. Just the Canadian was just a little bit higher, and then of course the US one is way higher than the Canadian one. Which, for your reference, Canada and US used to be their dollars used to be on the same level many years ago, and now the US has pulled ahead. So but yeah, food is just expensive down there. Everything is expensive when it comes to food. Actually, even public transportation is expensive down there. It costs a lot more to do things. Now, I would say some of the good things, though, is no tipping. You don't need to tip. Tipping is not a thing there. Most of the time when you pay, they don't even ask you about tips or anything like that. And even if they bring you the credit card machine, it either doesn't have an option for tipping, or when it says, would you like to give a tip, the server will even tell you, oh, you can just press no. Or they'll press it for you. They'll press the no button for you and then hand it to you. So you don't need to tip, which is really nice, because I hate tipping, because I like the idea of giving people extra money for a good service rendered. And I know that a lot of places in the States, people don't make a living wage unless they get the tips. I understand that. But like the culture of tipping, like especially, is not and here in Canada, our tipping is not as bad as in the States, at least where I am. So, and especially since nowadays, tipping is kind of like almost everything has the option to give a tip, whether you're actually being served by a server in a restaurant, or whether you're just like buying something at the store. There'll sometimes be an option for a tip. So there, no tipping, which is great. Usually all the tax is also included in prices, which is great, because everything there is like an even dollar amount. Everything ends in a 00 or like a 50 cents. There's no like 99, there's no 75. Everything is just an even dollar on your bill, which is perfect. And it's really great if you're paying in cash too, right? Hey Armand, welcome to the stream. Thanks for stopping by. So, however, even if you take into consideration that you don't need to tip and the taxes are included there, and then dollar convert, it's still the food is still more expensive, despite all that. But it is something you need to consider when you look at the prices. A lot of restaurants there do the thing where you sit down and then the menu is on a QR code that you need to scan. And personally, I'm more of a fan of reading an actual paper menu. I don't like having to scan QR codes, especially back when I was, like a student and I didn't have like a good data plan, or I didn't have data, right? And there wasn't Wi-Fi. I wouldn't be able to scan QR codes. So personally, I don't like QR codes menus. But there, not only do a lot of places have QR codes as their menus, but you also order and pay from the QR code. So you scan the QR code, you select what you want from your phone, and then you pay on your phone, and then the food just comes to you, and then when you're done, you just leave. Like, you don't even have to wait for someone to come and give you the bill. You just, because you already paid it. You paid it when you first came in, when you were on your phone. So that was kind of nice, but also kind of weird, especially since we're travelers, right? So not all of us had SIM cards. Some of us got SIM cards at the airport when we landed. Some of us didn't, because we figured we didn't all need to. So those of us that didn't have SIM cards weren't able to scan the QR codes. And even those of us that had SIM cards were able to scan the QR code, but we were unable to pay through the phone because when it gives you the credit card, when you enter your credit card information, it asks you for two-factor authentication, which means it will text you a code. However, because you're using a SIM card, it is unable to text you at your actual number because you're out of region and you have a different number on your SIM card. So we weren't able to use the SIM card. So every time we went to any restaurant that had a QR code, we'd have to tell them, oh, we're from out of town. Can we order the normal way? And they'd be fine with it, but most of the time they would just say, oh, you can just order at the counter. Like a lot of restaurants, you actually just, if you don't order through the QR code, you can walk up to the counter, order there, tell them your table number, and then just sit back down. Even if it's like a fine establishment. I'm not talking about like a fast casual restaurant. Like even like fine dining, you can order at the counter and then sit down and then they bring it to your table instead of having a waiter come by sometimes. A lot of restaurants still did the normal thing where waiter would come by, take your order, and then, they would come and give you the bill and stuff like that. But it's just like, yeah, it'd be like, oh, you just go to the counter and order, even though it's not a fast casual establishment, which I thought was kind of interesting. No split bills. They don't split your bills for you. Most restaurants will have a thing that says we do not split bills. Some restaurants, if you ask them, they don't even understand what you're talking about. So like a lot of times, because we're in a group, right? We're traveling as a group, and we eat at restaurants, and we want to split bills, and they just be like, "What do you mean? What do you mean split the bill? I don't understand." Like it's just a completely foreign concept to a lot of them. Even just like itemizing things on the bill doesn't make sense to them. So we would just pay together, and then we'd have to keep track of like how much we owe each other. We had like a running Google Doc of like, okay, you owe me this much, and then you owe me this much, and then I pay for this, and you pay for that, so we could settle our differences by the end. But it was a little annoying. Split bills just does not exist down there. It's not a thing. It's also really hard to get food between 2:30 and 5 o'clock. So a lot of places there are either open for breakfast and lunch or dinner. So all the breakfast lunch places will close by like 2 or 2:30, but all the dinner places will open at like 5. So between 2:30 and 5, it was really hard to find places for food. Even just like food stands and stuff, a lot of times it would be really hard to get food at that time. And even restaurants that are open all day sometimes close between like 2 and 5 o'clock. So you can't even get stuff there anyways. And even places that should be open the whole time. Like when we were at the beach, there were only like 2 places to get food at the beach. And those were the only 2 places for miles to get food. And they closed at 2 o'clock. So it was like, well, so if you want food after 2 o'clock at the beach, you can't. There's nowhere to get food, which is really weird. Also, every place serves liquor. It doesn't matter if it's just a little cafe or like a big restaurant or a fancy restaurant or a casual restaurant. Every place serves liquor. Every single place has an alcohol menu, which I thought was kind of interesting. It didn't even matter if you just stopped by like a little coffee shop stand on the side of the road. They had an alcohol menu, which, I don't really drink, but I guess if you do, congratulations. I was actually reading articles about how like apparently there's like Australia does have like an alcohol problem. I don't know how true that is, but I was reading an article about that. I also personally found that portions there are very small, but maybe just because I'm used to big portions, because in the States they have big portions, but I found like everything was kind of small portions down there. And I'm not even talking about going to like just a regular restaurant. Like, how like fine dining restaurants generally do give you small portions, right? And it's expensive. But I just felt like everywhere the portions were kind of small. and expensive. I would go to a place and I would get an appetizer and I would get a main course and I would get dessert and I'd still be hungry. Or I would get an appetizer at a main and I would still be hungry. And maybe that's just me because I'm a person that eats a lot, but it became all the more apparent here because all my friends, we would go together and then we would go somewhere to eat. They would have like one main course and they'd be like, "Oh, I'm so full." And I'd be like, I'd be eating the appetizer, I'd be eating the main course, I'd be eating the dessert, and I'd be like, I'm still kind of hungry, but I don't want to keep spending because it's expensive. Or I just have to go back to like our accommodations and just eat snacks that we compiled over there because I was still hungry. And they'd be like, "Here, are you still hungry? We just ate." And I'd be like, "Yeah." I barely had any food at that place. Like it's like crazy. But I think that's more just me. Maybe that's just me. I just eat a lot. But it was kind of funny because like, and sometimes my friends, sometimes especially if like one time we were out eating and like one of my friends was treating us, so at the end everyone's like, "Oh, I'm so full, that was so good," and they're treating me, right? So I don't want to ask for more food, so I'd be like, "Yeah, I'm so full," and then I get home and I would immediately just like, start eating snacks. But I think that's just a me thing. um oh yeah, public transportation also pretty expensive. The train system down there, spreads through the city, goes to the airport. It also goes to nearby other smaller cities. To take the train from the airport to the city, it was like $25. It was like crazy, or it was like 25 Australian dollars, which was like 22.57 Canadian, which is like 16.43 US. 16.43 US to get from the airport to the city on the train. And keep in mind, the airport is in the city. It's not outside of the city. The airport is in the city. It's just like not centered. Freaking expensive. Even if you take the train and you only take like one or two stops, or you take the bus only for a few stops, it costs quite a bit. It really adds up down there, despite the dollar difference. It's kind of crazy. They have a lot of parks, I found too. Like, you'd be in a neighborhood, and there'd be like a park with like a soccer field, football field, whatever you want to call it, and then you walk a couple blocks and there's another field for like croquet, and then you walk a couple blocks and then there's a park, and then you walk a couple blocks and then there's another park. It's like there's so much green space, which I found very surprising. And I was like, why don't they just collate them all into one park? And they all have different names. It's like, oh, this is this park and this is this park, etc. There was a lot of free Wi-Fi though around the city, which is kind of nice. Along the beach, on the public transportation, at a lot of like public institutions, there was free Wi-Fi, which is nice, especially for travelers like us. Lots of public washrooms, very well upkeep with them. You don't have to pay to use them, but they were very well cleaned and maintained, which was really nice. I think that's all I want to talk about, just like cultural differences, but those things will come up a lot as I continue talking about just the trip in general. But I want you to keep those all in mind as we go. So like, things are expensive, not pedestrian friendly, food small portions, no tipping, taxes included. They don't split bills. Okay, so arrival. So I went to Brisbane. So I didn't go to Melbourne or Sydney. My friend lives in Brisbane, so we went to Brisbane. Most tourists go to Sydney or Melbourne. That's kind of like the place that you would go. But we went to Brisbane, and I heard some people said like, "Oh, there's not much to see in Brisbane," which is not true. There's so much to see. So it was quite nice. Long flight, though. I won't tell you exactly how long because so you don't know where I live. But it was long, and plus we had connecting flights. And I'm not a person that sleeps very well on airplanes. I don't sleep on airplanes, so I was super tired by the end of the flight. I spent some of the flight watching The Last of Us because they had HBO, which was nice, and I don't have HBO. And I've been wanting to watch The Last of Us. It was really good. I like The Last of Us game, and I think it's perfect for a series like this because The Last of Us game has a great story, and the story's actually not that long. Like, it's padded out by the gameplay. Perfect size to fit into like a 9-episode thing. Really cool interpretation of the characters. They added a new spin on a couple things. The zombies were pretty cool. The changes they made were kind of cool. But I watched about 6 episodes. There's 9 episodes. I watched 6 episodes on the flight there. because between each episode, they're all very depressing too, because it's The Last of Us. So between each one, I was like, oh, I need a bit of a break from this. Also, my head hurt because I was on the airplane. And keep in mind that when you're flying from North America to Australia, you basically lose like 2 days. So I left on the Tuesday in the evening, and then I arrived in Australia Thursday morning. So I lost all of Wednesday. It was basically 2 days gone. And then when you catch up on your jet lag, it's basically like 3 days you lose just going there. We were really lucky that we dodged the IT outage. We heard about the IT outage after we got there, and I just heard it because it was on the radio of one of our Uber drivers, and I was like, what are they talking about? The big IT outage that affected all the flights and all sorts of things happened like 2 days after we flew out. So we were so lucky. And we actually considered leaving a little bit later, like when booking our flights. But we were like, no, let's give ourselves a couple extra days to accommodate before the wedding. And we were really lucky we did, because otherwise we would have missed it because of that. So I'm also the type of person on the airplane that doesn't generally need to get up very much. I do that by, I don't eat too much or drink too much, which I know isn't good on the airplane, because I don't want to have to get up from my seat, and I also don't want to have to use an airplane washroom, because airplane washrooms are disgusting. So I do my best not to leave my seat. And my friend really wanted the aisle seat, so that the friend that I was primarily traveling with wanted the aisle seat so that they could easily get up and go to the washroom. So I got the middle seat because I could be next to them. Normally I'd prefer the window seat because it means I would not have to move. On the flight there, though, there was like an old lady sitting next to me at the window seat. And I thought that she would have to get up so many times during the flight. She didn't get up once. She didn't get up once at all. She was like me. I was very surprised. She kind of did the same thing as me too. Like, she didn't eat too much when they came by with the food. She didn't like drink too much water. I was actually just very surprised, because I've never encountered another person like me on a flight that is so adamant about not having to use the airplane washroom that anyways, it meant that me as a middle seater also meant that I did not have to get up, which was nice. Hey Moo Moo, welcome to the stream. Thank you so much for stopping by. It's good to see you. So when we landed in Australia, it was like 7 a.m. in the morning, and we booked our Airbnb, but their check-in time was like 3 p.m. So in other words, when we landed at 7 a.m., we couldn't just go drop off our stuff and sleep somewhere. We had like another 6 hours, or no, not 6 hours. Like, oh my god, it was like 8 hours before like we were able to actually go and rest. And it was actually kind of horrible because, you know, I didn't sleep on the plane. My friends were able to fall asleep on the plane. I didn't, because I couldn't fall asleep on the plane. Plus, we had like our earlier connecting flights, and our flights started in the evenings, which means I was already awake since the morning. I was super tired. Luckily, when we landed, we phoned our friend who is local, and he was very nice enough to say, oh, actually, you know, I'm free now. If you want, you can drop off your stuff at my place. So we were able to drop off our stuff at his place, and then rest a little bit, walk around, get some food. By then, I was a little bit more awake, just walking around and eating and feeling the sun kind of woke me up a little bit more. So first, we went to the grocery store, and our friend like recommended to us a bunch of snacks. The snacks down there aren't really significantly different than what we have here. They just might go with different names, or they might have different flavors that we don't have. For example, like they have all these Cadbury chocolates and like Allen's candies, but they have like brands or flavors that I've never seen before, but they're essentially things that we've had before. I picked up these ones because they had frogs on them, so of course I had to. These Freddo, they were like strawberry flavored like cream coated in chocolate. I also got these like gummies called Frogs Alive. I got like the raspberry one. They tasted like Swedish fish. If you ever had Swedish fish or Swedish berries, they tasted like that. There's like a cracker company called Shapes. It's quite common, and so we just we looked at all these, and my friend's like, yeah, Shapes pretty popular here, and like that's such a weird name. It's just called Shapes, and mostly they're square and they have different flavors. And then I saw they had an Xbox controller flavored one, so I got the Xbox controller flavored one because I thought it was hilarious. I got some honey soy chicken chips because my friend recommended them, and Tim Tams, a lot of different flavors, including ones that I hadn't seen before. Tim Tams aren't super common where I am either, so they were kind of new-ish to me, even though I know that a lot of people have had Tim Tams before. Hey Scarlett, welcome to the stream. Thanks for stopping by. We also picked up some Vegemite rolls. I've never had Vegemite before, and of course, while we're down there, we figured we might as well try it. Spoiler alert, it was not that great. It was very salty. Very salty. I would not eat another Vegemite thing again. I was so thirsty after I ate one of those buns. Like I ate one and I was like, I need to drink like 2 gallons of water or something like that. It was so salty, and not even like salty in a good way. Just like, yeah. I know some people like the taste of Vegemite or whatnot. I am not. I'm not a fan. I am not a fan. My friend also pointed out there's this one company down there, High Smile, and they have all these like flavored toothpaste. So we actually saw a bunch of them on the shelves, and they had like interesting, like their toothpaste looked like cosmetics, and they look kind of tasty. They're the ones we saw here: the blue raspberry, bubblegum, strawberry, watermelon, coconut, peach iced tea, red velvet, smooth mint, and vanilla. Like that sounds delicious, but I don't know how I'd feel about brushing my teeth with something that has the flavor of candy. I don't know if that would be I don't know if that might be a little counterintuitive to what I'm trying to do, but I just thought that was kind of interesting. I didn't buy them, but some of my friends bought some to try, but I did not partake in the flavored toothpaste, but they sound interesting. They sounded interesting. Oh, great. One of my photos didn't load. That's fantastic. Whatever. These were just different. We just walked around town for a little bit while we were waiting for our Airbnb to open up. So we just took some pictures along the coast, some nice little river walks. Again, lots of parks. So a lot of places where you could just walk around and look at the city, look at the water. On the picture on the left is a house. And I took a picture of this because a lot of the houses in that area we were in are built on like stilts, because apparently the area used to be subject to flooding. And a lot of people just use the area underneath their houses with those stilts just as storage area, or they would like make them into little like outdoor patios or whatnot, which is kind of cool. But some of the houses looked really precarious on the stilts. Like I know the stilts are made of like steel beams or whatnot. We saw one house that was still being built or moved. I don't know what it was. It was like the entire house was about 1 or 2 stories off the ground, but the only thing underneath it were just piles of bricks. Like literally just piles of like 2 brick thick pillars, or like just a few 2x4s stacked on top of each other. It looked very precarious. It looked like if there was like a gust of wind, the house would just fall over. It was very not safe looking. But I just thought that was kind of neat. I should have taken a picture of that one. It's kind of interesting to see like what architecture looks like from place to place. Are you kidding me? How come so many of my pictures aren't loading? Let me have a look. I wanna check this. Oh, actually a lot of my pictures. Oh, I think it's just the first like. What? Why are so my pictures like? Okay, it's actually like just the first 10 slides. Maybe it's just because I made them earlier in the day and now they're disconnecting. Let me refresh and see. Can I refresh this? I don't want to have to re-add all the photos because there's so many. I told you guys, I spent all day making this slideshow. Why is this one not loading? I don't even know which ones I need to re-upload. They appear fine on the thumbnail, which is the weirdest part. Oh my god, more of them are breaking as I'm looking through this. More of them are breaking. Why? Why is this happening? I'm just gonna close the program. Oh, program crashed. That's fantastic. Don't you love technology sometimes? Oh, oh, they reloaded. Okay, okay, okay. It's working. It's working. It's working. Okay, okay. It's working. It's working. Okay. Oh yeah, we went to a place to eat, and they had one of those like robot servers as well, and it's like one of the ones we saw in Los Angeles. I just thought it was hilarious because this restaurant we went to was very small. Like there was no need for them to have a robot server, but it was so cute. Like the the server was literally just standing like 2 feet away from our table, and she still put the things on on the robot server, and then pushed the button for it to come and serve us. And it also like played music, so it was very like loud about it too. But I just thought it was cute. So more walking around the city. There's the Brisbane sign, bunch of letters arranged with the word Brisbane. Really hard to take a picture of it without other people in the picture. I was actually really lucky there weren't that many people here. Later we came back and they were like in the middle of the day, and there were like 20 kids climbing on these letters. Kids just love to climb, I guess. There's this like Eiffel Tower looking thing, and then this is the wheel of Brisbane. It's like a Ferris wheel that Brisbane is kind of known for. You can go up in it and have a look at the city. We didn't do it because you had to pay, of course, and we didn't think it was worth it, but kind of neat. So finally, we were able to check into our Airbnb, and man, I just like immediately showered and went to sleep. I slept for like 20 hours straight because I was so tired. By then, I'd been awake for like 40 hours nonstop. But the Airbnb was nice. We were at an apartment, and at the very top floor of the apartment, there was like a nice little shared barbecue area and a swimming pool. And then there was also another swimming pool and a shared barbecue area partway up, because there was like a big it's like a big building, but it has like 3 towers. So we're staying in one tower. So on the floor where all the towers split, there was another common area as well. Yeah, this time we didn't have to do anything. Actually, no. So when I did my previous stream, when we talked about my Los Angeles trip, getting into the Airbnb was a little shady, and it felt like we had to sneak around. This time, we didn't quite have to sneak around, but one thing we did need to do, because it was an apartment building, was, to go into the building, you need to scan your like fob to get into the door, right? But we didn't have one because we need to get it. So the way the person set it up for us was that we had to go into the building, and the fob was in a lockbox in their mailbox that we could access. But the problem is we couldn't get through the opening of the building. So even in the instructions for the Airbnb, it says, wait for someone else to leave the building or someone else to enter, and then just come in with them. Which I know a lot of these apartment buildings discourage you to do that, right? You're not really supposed to do that. If you open the door, you're not supposed to leave it open for someone else or let someone else in or out, just to keep, for security purposes. But I think this apartment building had a lot of Airbnb people in it, because I think it was very common. And I saw a lot of people that were very obviously not locals just by their behavior. So yeah, we quickly like ducked in when someone else like exited the building, and then we grabbed our keys and it was fine. But it was we were worried about it on the flight there, because that was the instruction, right? And we're like, well, what if no one's going in, or what if someone stops us, right? We were kind of worried about it, but luckily it was fine, and there was plenty of foot traffic as well. So this I thought was hilarious, but the day I landed in Australia, and then I checked Twitter when I got to the Airbnb, for some reason it said trending in Australia, Asians. And then I showed it to a friend, and they were like, "Oh, they must have known that you were coming," or something like that. Something else I thought was really interesting was when I was there, of course, my mobile Twitter gives me, local ads, and a lot of the ads, the promoted ads on Twitter down there, are from the Australian government, and they were actually like PSAs. Like these two I saw a lot. Like this one is talking about like teaching kids the value of respect before it leads to like violence, and then this one is talking about like helping people understand what consent is. And I thought that was really good. Like these are things that people need to learn growing up that is not always explicitly taught. Like I know obviously most people aren't going to click on these ads, but I thought like, oh, like it kind of shows like what their priorities are, like what kind of ads these children there might be inundated with, compared to like, here, if you scroll through like your Twitter and you look at the ads that it forces upon you, it's like things like, oh, invest in this AI or this NFT or this get rich quick scheme, or oh, who wants to support this political party, or who wants to go see some explicit content on this page? Like very, raunchy, not good advertising. But I don't know. I was like, oh, I'm actually impressed. There's actually like good messages behind these ads here from the Australian government. Who would have thought? So I'm going to talk about a lot of the places that we went through. Unlike my Los Angeles trip, I'm not going to go through them necessarily in chronological order or a day by day. So when I did my Los Angeles recap, I said like day 1 we did this, day 2 we did this. I'm not going to do that here. I'm just going to list by location and what we did. I'm also going to save all the food for near the end. So I'm going to talk about all the food we ate all together. So you guys will be nice and hungry by then. So there's a lot of museums and art galleries in Brisbane, and they're almost all free to get into, which is awesome. And they're almost all located near each other. The only thing I find confusing is a lot of them have similar names. Like you'll have like the Queensland Museum, the Brisbane Museum, the Museum of Brisbane, the Museum of Queensland, the Brisbane Art Gallery, the Queensland Art Gallery, the Art Gallery of Brisbane, the Art Gallery of Queensland. Like they all have really similar names to each other. So Queensland Museum is like a, museum. So they have a lot of educational exhibits. The first floor was like a war exhibit. So they talked a lot about the cultural history and the wars fought by Australia. There was a cool tank there with a lot of information about the tanks, which I thought was kind of neat. There was like a lot of like uniforms and photos and old technology. It was pretty cool. I thought this one was kind of interesting. So there was like a thing teaching people about like Morse code. So you could send your own message for fun, which is basically you just press these buttons on this machine. So you choose your message by pressing the button. So there's like 3 buttons to choose from. Things like, location of enemy target, or location of base, or like a warning. So you don't actually write the message. You just press the button, and then they ask you, okay, how do you want to deliver it? And so one of them is like through Morse code, or one of them is like with the carrier pigeon, or like through letter. And then so you click on which one you do, and then you click on like where you want to send it, and then basically it simulates it, and then it tells you whether you're successful. At the end of the day, it's all like RNG when you press the buttons and then you send it, and then it tells you whether or not it worked. But I just thought it was funny because the first one I sent, I was like, oh, let's send a message by carrier pigeon, and then I sent the message, and then immediately just says pigeon shot. Your message was lost, and I was like, oh, okay. I think it took me like 3 tries until I got one through. It said, message got through, you saved the day. I just thought that was really interesting. Oh, there's also like I forgot to include it in the PowerPoint here, but there was a did you know fact, and it said like, did you know that like this many carrier pigeons were used by like Australian soldiers during like World War II or something like that? Like I was like, it was a really high number. Like it was in the thousands, I think. And I was very like surprised. I don't remember what it was though, so don't quote me on that. But yeah, revenge for the pigeon. I just immediately it's just like, okay, send message, boop boop boop, pigeon shot. Like, oh, okay, great. They had like an outdoor dinosaur garden with like, it's actually only 2. There's only 2 dinosaurs out in the outdoor dinosaur garden. This museum was like navigating. I described it as like navigating like a dungeon in a JRPG, because like some of the elevators would only go to certain floors, or like some of the staircases would stop on certain floors and you wouldn't know how to get to the next one, or there'd be signs directing you somewhere, but then they would suddenly like trail off. So just to get to like the next floor, like me and this other person were like standing there in front of this elevator for the longest time because we couldn't find the stairs and we only saw the elevator. The stairs we did see, it looked like they were behind a desk that was asking people for payments to get into like a special like science center area, which was it was basically like children's activities. You had to pay, but there was like a desk, and then there was like a staircase behind it. So it looked like you need to pay, but I knew the museum was free, but I didn't want to go into an area that was paid. So I was waiting for this elevator, and there were like multiple elevators, and apparently some of the elevators only went to like the upper floors, and some of them only went to the lower floors, so some of them only went up to like floor 3, and if you want to get to floor 4, you had to like do something different. And then they had like different buttons, so we were like clicking all the different buttons and we're waiting. It took like 7 minutes for the elevator to come. But then by the time it came, it was a group of people going down. I wanted to go up, but I was tired of waiting, so I went down and ended up in this like dinosaur garden, and it was like okay, it was just like a dead end with like two dinosaurs and like a little bit of greenery and like two benches. I was like, this is the dinosaur garden. But then I found out that the staircase was actually like fully accessible, despite the fact that it was behind a desk that looked like you need to pay, apparently. So I just took the stairs. It was very confusing. Again, it felt like going through a JRPG dungeon where the architecture doesn't really make intuitive, logical sense. And you're like, okay, where do I go to get to the next location, right? So the museum entranceway going up, there was like a bunch of like minerals. There was like a giant squid here, which was huge. And it looked so funny because they replaced the eye of the giant squid with like a placeholder eye. It just looked like a big googly eye. But the squid was gigantic. Like the head of the squid alone was like this like a size of a soccer ball. Like it was huge. And then they also have this like giant sign up here, which I think was great. And a lot of places had these like acknowledgements of the land and the unjust things that were done to indigenous people upon settling on the land and like taking things for the museum in the past and like apologies and talking about what they're doing for reconciliation and what they're doing to acknowledge the land and help indigenous people. Like I thought that was great. A lot of places had acknowledgements like this, which I think is a really good step in the right direction for reconciliation, and it was out in the open for everyone to see. And yeah, I just think more places need to do stuff like that, especially since we're moving more towards progression in reconciliation and stuff like that too. So I was happy to see that. There was like a prehistoric section, a lot of dinosaur bones, fossils, a lot of infographics talking about the creation of the world in prehistoric Jurassic like time periods and like the development of mammals and stuff like that too. It was very educational. It was very, very cool. And then if you go up, there's like a bunch of like taxidermized animals. I didn't take pictures of all of them. There were so many of them. There was like an insect section, like a amphibian section, mammal section, bird section. I took a picture of the kangaroo because, I'm in Australia. I think these snakes were also pretty cool too. They were like a bunch of snakes in jars. Of course, I had to take a picture of the frog. There were actually very few frogs in this museum. There were like 2 frogs in the museum. Maybe only like less than 10 mentions of frogs in general, but I was like, okay, I gotta take a picture of this because, frogman and all. But it was very cool, like especially the insect collection. And I didn't take a picture of it, but there was like a giant display. There are a few display cases of like leaf and stick insects, like the insects that disguise themselves as leaves and sticks. And one of the caretakers was actually like taking them out and cleaning and like spraying water on their trees and stuff like that too. And then like the stick insects were just walking across the desk, like they were just like walking around on the desk. And it was it was a little creepy to see them, but it was also really, really cool. And it was also like, oh, better be careful and watch where I step and touch just in case one of them escaped or something like that. They also had this like special exhibit going on. It was like a Lego Jurassic Park crossover thing. So they had a whole bunch of displays of like different Lego sets of different Jurassic like sets that they've made over the years. And then there was like a special exhibit you can get into that was created by Lego, and you had to pay to go into that exhibit. And I wasn't going to at first, but I figured that I should while I'm there. I thought it might be kind of fun. It was fun, but it was also maybe not worth the price for me because I think a lot of the activities in there were intended for children, but I thought it was just neat anyways. And you're allowed to take pictures in there, by the way, so I'm not showing off pictures of things I shouldn't. But when you go there, they like have a giant gate made of Lego. This is Jurassic World. There's a sign here that says, to avoid Lego ouch, please wear shoes at all times. Warning, Lego bricks can be a choking hazard. Parental supervision required. I just thought that was kind of funny. The Lego ouch, please wear shoes. One of the activities in there was this like mystery mosaic. So they had a giant wall with a bunch of pieces of Lego there, and they're creating a mosaic. And basically what you could do is they had a bunch of stations where there were iPads, and they would display like a Lego configuration, and you had to take a little board and recreate it using the colors that they specified. So I made one. You can see it like resting right next to the screen there. You make it, you match the colors, and then afterwards you give it to the attendant. They make sure you did it right, and then they locate it on the board, and then they add it to the board. So I officially contributed 1 square to this mystery mosaic, and one day it will be complete, and we'll see what the mystery picture is. That was me. I did that. That one piece would not have been done without me. A lot of big dinosaurs made out of Lego with little infographics talking about what they were and about like, facts about those dinosaurs and what they were like back in the day, which I thought was pretty cool. Even more of them. Some of the space were really cool. Like they had one that was they had like a full on like Jeep made of Lego and it had like a dinosaur head chasing it and like you could take pictures with it. But there were so many kids climbing on it, I couldn't get a good picture of it. There were other little like stations. Like one of them was you could make like a dinosaur track, so you could select a dinosaur. They would show you what the shape of the track was, and you could build it with Lego and then place it on the wall to display. There were a lot of those where they would ask you to design your own thing on Lego and then place it on the wall, and they would give you like instructions or guidelines on how to do that. There was also one where you had to like design your own like getaway vehicle for getting away from the dinosaurs. So you make a little vehicle out of Lego, and then they had like a ramp where you could put it on, and you would slide down and like race other people to see who can get down to the finish. Again, a lot of these meant for children, but they seem like they have a good time. Oh yeah, and they also had like a video at the end where you could sit and watch, and they would talk about the making of the Lego exhibit, which I thought was pretty cool. Queensland Art Gallery, located in the same building as the museum. A lot of really cool displays of art here, and a lot of them are indigenous works too. So they had a lot of like meaning behind them. We're talking about the history of the land and things like that too. So the one in the bottom right here is like a bunch of tree trunks that have been chainsawed into various like interesting shapes. There's also like a bunch of paintings and a bunch of like water and rock formations. It was pretty relaxing. It was a nice museum. I like it. The museum also had a lot of just regular artwork too, paintings, um, old like furnishings and stuff like that too. A lot of history and things behind each of them, a lot of stories, a lot of little info plates, which I thought was kind of neat. Hey, Dream Yuma-chan, welcome to the stream. Thanks for stopping by. They also had like an international art section of the museum, so they had a lot of like works from different places in the world, and they talked about how they got here to Australia and stuff like that too. It was really cool. I like it when I can visit like an art gallery or museum, and there's like some education and stuff to be had too. This exhibit was really cool. So if you look at the one on the left, it's like a bunch of like aluminum tin cans that have been like peeled back and then reconfigured into various plants, indigenous plants to Australia, and they were talking about how like about recycling and littering and like the cycle of waste and the use of resources. There were like about like 24 of these all together in the display case, and it's easy to miss it. But if you look at the one on the left, I picked this one specifically because it was really cool. Inside the tin, there's actually like a shape of a human body part. So in this case, it's the spine. So you can see like it's the back of a person, and if you look really carefully, there's little like notches to show like the spine and the rib cage. And I was like, that's so cool that they did that, and you can see the grooves and stuff. Even though it's like this tiny little piece of metal. The one on the right is more obvious. It's obviously a head inside the tin thing. A lot of them were really subtle. At first, it took me a second to like be like, wait a second, is that a body part? Wait, that one has a body part too. Wait, that one has a body part too. Because at first I thought they were just like designs on the inside of the tins. I actually had a picture of like 5 or 6 of them all lined up together. But the reason why I didn't include it in the slideshow is because a lot of them are sexual body parts. Like a lot of them were body parts that I probably shouldn't be showing you on stream, but like a lot of like groin areas or chest areas, or like there were some that were like like stomachs and belly buttons and stuff like that too, but a lot of them were explicit body parts. But again, it was very subtle. Like you might not notice it unless you looked really carefully, because like the one on the left here, it was just like it looked like just a piece of metal with some grooves into it as well. But there was like a story behind each of them. It was really, really neat about like indigenous people and their connection to the land and their treatment by the settlers and stuff like that too. Very, very powerful. Hey Timbit, welcome to the stream. Thanks for stopping by. There's also the state library next door. I went to the library. There's this cool statue outside of it. I didn't take that many pictures though, because I thought it was kind of weird to go around taking pictures of people who are just in there just reading and studying. But it was a really cool library. It was very large. There were many floors. There was a lot of like interesting archives of like educational materials in addition to just books and stuff. There were like a lot of like digital medias as well. There was a nice little gift shop. There was a cafe. It was pretty neat. You might just be able to like Google pictures of the State Library of Queensland, but it was pretty nice. Again, I didn't take many pictures of it. I just thought it was too weird. People might have felt like I was being a weirdo. Also, it kind of smelled like marijuana when I went inside, I'll say. Well, I went inside and I was like, I think someone's been smoking because it was very strong smell and I don't like that smell. So I didn't stay there very long. Now, next to that was the Queensland Gallery of Modern Art. And the art in here was very interesting, I would say, compared to the art in the other art gallery. And you'll see what I mean. Now, this set of exhibits was actually pretty cool. These are apparently all submitted by students. So students from all across Australia submit these works. I think they're high school students. I could be wrong. They might be college level students. I think they were high school students. But basically, they all send these things in, and then people vote on them. Some panel of judges vote on them, and they display the best ones in this area of the museum. This one on the left was really cool. It was like the person's like grandmother or something like that. And it was in a picture frame, but all those are, she's actually made of a bunch of threads, and the threads like unfurl at the end and fall. And then the interior of the picture frame is transparent, which I thought was pretty cool. The one on the bottom right here is a bunch of sporting equipment that has been repurposed into instruments. And it told the story about how the person was really into sports, and then they got into music, and then they like bridged the two interests together, which I thought was pretty neat. Unfortunately, I don't remember the story of the one in the top right here, but it looked pretty striking to me. This one was probably my favorite one, and it was basically a piece of art on a corrugated canvas. And because it was corrugated canvas, if you stood at one angle, it would form a picture, and if you stood at a different angle, it would form a different picture. But in addition to that, the colors on the thing, it was lit up by like a colored light that would change between like green light, purple light, blue light, red light, orange light, and each color it changed to would change the image on the piece of paper because, you know, the paper is drawn with different colors. And it was very interesting, and it told the story of like an immigrant. I think they were a Filipino immigrant to Australia. Again, I could be wrong, but it told like the story of them immigrating and finding themselves as someone in like a foreign land where they didn't feel represented, and then finding themselves. Like, it was a very interesting work of art. And literally, again, it was just one corrugated canvas with colors on the lighting that would change, that would tell the story. You'd have to look at it from different angles and different colors. It was very, very neat, and I was very impressed that this was made by a student. Now, there were a lot of like video sections. This section was not students submitted. These were like actual artists, or like actual like known artists. Very weird. Very weird. In the bottom right, there's a picture, there was a video of a person with like clown makeup. They look like they're from like Insane Clown Posse or something like that. And it's just them eating a burger. And it's like a 7-minute video. And then the video on the left is like a video of this person, and they're in like a swimming pool, and they're just drinking a can of Pocari Sweat, which is a Japanese like energy drink. And it's just them drinking it for like 4 minutes. And I was like, is this modern art nowadays? This is kind of strange, right? But if you read the descriptions that accompany them, they're kind of interesting, because they do have like commentary on like indigenous people, culture, capitalism, representation, things like that. Like the descriptions were actually really interesting. The videos themselves, though, were kind of weird. There's also this other one of like, it was like a video of this lady lying down, and she would just move her legs like as if she's walking up the wall, and then she would move her legs back down. And I don't remember what the description of that one said, but it was kind of strange. And then there was the one next to it, which is just like a pair of legs standing on tippy toes and moving around. Like, it was weird. Like, these are kind of like these are kind of the parts that made me think of like, is this what modern art is nowadays? I don't think I understand it. Like, it gave that kind of illicit feelings until I read some of the descriptions and stuff like that too. These ones were kind of cool. There were like a bunch of skulls that were made by crystallized sugar. So they were actually like shiny. You could see that they were made by granules of sugar. And then there was this picture of like a person with their head replaced by plants looking in different directions. I think it was like a commentary on indigenous plants and how they've been moved from their home locations to other ones, to like different places or taken away. I thought that was actually kind of cool. And then I think the sugar skulls were some commentary on like the use of sugar and capitalism or something like that. Again, I don't remember all the different signs. This one I thought was very fascinating. There was a bunch of plants inside like test tubes and beakers and jars, and then they were on a bench, and then over the speakers they would be playing someone speaking in an indigenous language. And then I read on the sign. Unfortunately, the sign was kind of hard to read, so I think a lot of people would have missed it. It was hard to find, but it talked about how like a lot of plants in indigenous Australia were taken ever since the invention of like the glass jar and other instruments and containers. Settlers or people have been able to basically steal and capture plants and then take them for study, but also bring them to other countries, removing them from their indigenous homes and also disrupting the ecosystem. And then so they had a bunch of plants in the jars here, and then they were being spoken to in their native indigenous language over the speakers because it was like welcoming them back home or something like that. Like it was a very interesting exhibit that you might have missed if you didn't read the sign, which again was not in a place that was very standoutish to read to begin with. So like that kind of stuff, I was like, okay, that's cool modern art. I can get behind that. So this is another museum called the Museum of Brisbane, and this one is actually located inside their city hall. So first we went to the city hall. It was a very old building. It looked pretty cool, kind of like, you know, most old buildings, has interesting architecture. This was also very much like a JRPG dungeon, because a lot of the stairways did not always go to all the floors. Some elevators would only go to like one or two floors and not the other ones, so you'd have to find a different elevator. A lot of the signs that pointed you in one direction would be pointing in very vague directions and not explicitly telling you like which hallway to go down. So it was actually really hard navigating this building. It kind of reminds me of Shin Megami Tensei 3, the Diet Building dungeon. It was like a maze. Yeah, literally. And the museum was apparently on the third floor, but only like certain elevators would go to it and not all of them, and not all staircases would go to them and stuff like that too. So we were looking for this museum for quite a while inside the city hall, but the whole building is like open for people to explore and walk around, except for a couple areas. So it was actually kind of cool. More architecture. There was also like the speakers building inside the city hall where they have their meetings and performances and whatnot. Pretty nice. We finally made our way to the museum, which is on the third floor. They had a variety of different things, a lot of modern art. Again, there was like LGBTQIA stuff. There was this beautiful flower room with like light filtering through the windows that formed shapes on the floor. The nice thing about this place was also a lot of the art exhibits had like little plaques that describe the art. And sometimes it'd be like 2 or 3 paragraphs. And at the bottom, there'd be like another paragraph that says like simple explanation, and then it would give like a half paragraph explanation. It was like a too long didn't read type of thing at the bottom of each display, which I thought was kind of funny. Yeah, like sometimes it really felt like we needed like some kind of key or something to get into like the elevator. Or sometimes we'd like take an elevator that only goes to like one floor, and the floor would be a dead end, and we'd be like, okay, now where do we go? We have to go back. And the elevators took forever too. They were super slow. So there were some like flower tapestries, there were some traditional paintings. These ones were kind of cool. They were like close-up like microscope pictures of certain indigenous plants. And then the one on the left, I can't remember exactly what it was, but they were like carved out pieces made to represent certain types of plants. This one was like a bunch of like little saucer containers arranged together into like a big folding petal, which is pretty neat. There was also another display that was like in a dark room with changing lights and stuff like that too, and sounds, which is kind of neat, but that one didn't really translate well into photography, so I couldn't really share it with you guys. There's also this thing here, this like umbrella holder or thing like where you can get complimentary little bags for your umbrellas, and it said, bag your brolly here. Now, I don't know if they all call umbrellas brollies down there, or if it was trying to be funny, Not that we really heard anyone ever saying the word umbrella, but we just thought it was like, oh, they call umbrellas brollies down here. There's also this cute little like um tea room cafe inside the city hall, and apparently it's been around for like 100 years, something like that. And it was very nice. It was very quaint. We sat down and we had a little bit of a snack, although the tables were kind of cramped. Like you didn't really have much room to sit. Um, and unfortunately, they were very understaffed, so it was a little slow. But it was nice. You can get like all types of different like pastries and teas and little things like traditional like English type of snacks. And if you came at certain times, you could also get like high tea, and they would give you like tea and little like um, sets of food that you could try out. Or if you wanted, you can get like alcohol, of course. Like I said, a lot of places there seem to serve alcohol. There were some special high tea sets that you needed to reserve ahead of time. Apparently, it was a pretty neat little quaint place and a nice place to stop and rest for the day as we were journeying. And yeah, again, like the city has a lot of parks. There were so many different parks inside the city and gardens as well. So this is the Brisbane Botanic Gardens. We just walked around in here. A lot of foliage, a lot of like tropical looking plants, a lot of fountains, a lot of nice places for people just to go on picnics or take their dogs for a walk or stuff like that too. Go, I don't know, throw a frisbee around. I don't know if people do it down there. It was really nice. It was just smack dab in the middle of the city too. Again, we also found there was like this food truck here, Andy's Kangaroo and Currywurst. Unfortunately, when we got there, they were already closing up. Again, like I said, a lot of places there close early. So if you want to get food in the mid-afternoon, it's actually really hard to find places to get food sometimes. But apparently they served kangaroo meat, and this was the only place we saw that they served kangaroo meat. And they had like, did you know facts about kangaroo meat as well on the side. And of course you can see there's like ibises in the background there looking for food. The bin chickens again, as so they're called. So more of the Botanic Gardens. Again, beautiful place. Nice place to walk around. Yeah, the climate there is definitely perfect for having these. Like if you had these like where I am, it's like, you know, half the year they'd be covered in snow and no one would be able to do anything with them. So on the way back we walked past the Maritime Museum, which was cool, but we didn't go inside. It was also late in the day. But we were looking, if you look at the picture on the left, right? We were looking at the Maritime Museum, and my friend goes, "Wait, what's that at the bottom there?" No way. And we looked, and there was a freaking crocodile just hanging out there. And my friend thought it was a statue. He was like, "Oh, that must be like a statue." I circled it here in red. You can't really see the red circle that well, but my friend was like, "I think that's a statue," and I'm like, "No, I think that's a real crocodile that might have been left there, like when the tides came in, and then when the tides came out, he just hung around or something." Because I'll show you pictures of crocodiles later that we saw at the zoo and stuff, but I'm pretty sure, and there'd be no purpose to having a crocodile statue there. It's not a place that people walk. It'd just be, yeah, just a crocodile just chilling there. There was also a nice like river walk on the way back. We walked along the beach, and it was very, very pretty. There were so many like green spaces for people just to chill. A lot of beaches, a lot of lawns. There were also like little like pools people could go and hang out in. There was like a canopy walkway. There was also this little train that would drive around, and if you wanted, you could pay money and ride in the train instead of walking along the shore, because it was quite long actually. We did so much walking this day. Every day we did a lot of walking. I was consistently tired by the end of each day because there were so many places to walk around, but it was pretty cool. So this was actually a really cool day. We went to the Lone Pine Koala Sanctuary. So most people, when you go to Brisbane, you either go to the Lone Pine Koala Sanctuary or you go to the Steve Irwin Family Zoo. And apparently, according to what we heard from people, both the locations are almost the same in terms of what you see. So you could, if you go to one, there's no point in going to the other, or so I've heard. The problem is the Steve Irwin Family Zoo is actually like an hour out of town, and you need a car to get there. The Lone Pine Koala Sanctuary, there's actually a bus that takes you directly there. The regular bus line will take you there. It's a little bit out of town. So we decided to go to the Lone Pine Koala Sanctuary. Some of my friends did go to the Steve Irwin Family Zoo, and they said they had a good time. They saw Steve Irwin's son. He was doing like performances and stuff like that too. Apparently, his face is like on all the branding there. He's like the face of the zoo, and they have like some shows there. But we did not go to the Irwin Family Zoo. Lone Pine Koala Sanctuary was pretty cool though, and there were so many different animals to be seen. So when you get in, the first thing you see is there's a bunch of cages with bats hanging there. There's so many bats. They were pretty large. A lot of koalas, of course. They're very lazy things. They just sit around, they eat all day and sleep. Apparently, because they only eat eucalyptus leaves, right? And eucalyptus is not high in nutrition, so they don't have much energy. And the koalas actually make really interesting sounds. Like we were walking around near the end of the day, and we heard this koala going like, "Arr, arr," and we're like, what is that sound? And then we go around and we found a koala just sitting there like growling. And then one of the keepers told us that they're just very territorial, and sometimes they'll just do that normally. It's not the sound that you would expect to hear from a koala. It was very interesting. You need a Kiro animal sound redeem? Yeah, no thanks. Yeah, I was very surprised by the sounds that the koalas make, and there's so many of them. They're just chilling and eating, living their best life. There was also a crocodile, and there was like a crocodile viewing dome. So if you want, you can go and poke your head through the dome and have a closer look at the crocs. They're pretty lazy. They just sit around and lie in the sun all day because I guess they're well fed by the zookeepers, so they don't really need to do anything. There were also like a bunch of shows, but unfortunately we missed a lot of the shows because they happened early in the morning. Like there was the sheepdog show, or there was like the you could hold on to the raptor birds and take a picture with a raptor bird for an extra fee, for example. There were a couple other shows I can't remember that we missed, but so there were a lot of like farm animals. There were goats, there were sheep, there were pigs, just hanging around, chilling. Look at the goat here in the bottom left. He had like a massive beard, pretty fancy. There's also we saw a sheepdog that was just playing with a sheep. These are wombats. So the wombats were pretty cute, and they just kind of sit around and sleep because I think they're more nocturnal, so they prefer moving around at night. So they didn't really seem that energetic. There were also some echidnas, but I didn't see any because I think they were all hiding because they're, again, nocturnal. This was a tree kangaroo. So there was this like giant tree. It was huge. And then we were told that there was a tree kangaroo inside it. And it took me a while to find it. And if you look, I circled it here in red. It's very hard to see because it's so far away. These things go so high up into the trees. And apparently they can jump from up there and land on the ground and they're fine. And they're a bit different than your regular kangaroos. But they're very, very interesting. There are multiple different types of kangaroos. So I didn't really get a good look at this one. But that tree was so high. And just imagining that it got up there and then also could jump back down if it wanted to. These are Tasmanian devils. They were probably my favorite part because they were really energetic. Unlike most of the animals that just sat around and stared at us or just slept, these guys were constantly like running around and just looking like they were having a good time. They were just walking around, trudging along these little pathways. The exhibit was built so there was like a walkway over them, so you could see them like walking underneath you and stuff like that too, because they would go under the ramps. Very, very cute. Very energetic little guys. These two donkeys were so funny. I think the one behind is a male one, and the one in front is a female one. The male one was like following the female one and just bothering her the whole time. She was walking around. She didn't look the least bit interested. He kept following her, nudging her, like pawing at her, or whatever they call it, like nudging his face into her. And she was just like having none of it. She was just like, get away from me, man. I'm just here to relax. There were like a bunch of different bunnies with different like types of bunnies from different places. There were also like a lot of chickens just like walking around freely in the zoo. There was a bunch of guinea pigs, and then there's like a bunch of little baby chicks here inside this little pen. They were so cute. They were just chirping the whole time, making such cute sounds, just chirp, chirp, chirping, and all just eating the little like bird feed or whatever that they put in there. Super cute. Oh, so there's an enclosure for the kangaroos that you can go in and you can pet the kangaroos, you can feed the kangaroos. Some of them are actually not even in the enclosure. Some of them are just chilling outside the enclosure. But the enclosure had like an adult entrance and exit and a child entrance and exit. And I was like, that's so funny. Why is there like a tiny door here for the children? But you could like buy kangaroo feed and feed it to them and whatnot. And then there was like hand sanitizer for you to sanitize your hands. So these are the kangaroos. And again, there's different types of kangaroos. So the kangaroos here pictured are not the type of kangaroos like when you think of kangaroos, you think of like, the big bulky muscular ones that have like the giant pecs and they basically like punch you out if you pick a fight with them. But these ones were pretty quiet and not really like they weren't jacked up like the other ones. And they were just hanging around, chilling, waiting for humans to come and feed them and pet them. They would just lie down in the sun. There were so many of them. There were easily like 50 or more kangaroos just in this enclosure, and people were just walking around taking pictures of them, lying down with them, feeding them, petting them, all sorts of things. They were very cute. There were eagles as well. The eagles were pretty cool. There were also the dingoes, and the dingoes were really interesting. We went to a show where one of the keepers actually talked about dingoes, and like apparently dingoes, even though they're like canine, they are not very dog-like. They describe them as they don't really have personalities like dogs. So like if you as the keeper enter the enclosure, they don't come and play with you or anything like that. Unless if you have food, they'll come and like pine at you for the food, but otherwise they would just leave you alone, right? Like they're not like, even though they look like dogs, they don't act like dogs, and they'll take them for walks out in like the parking lot and among the people in the early days as well. And they're like Australia's biggest like land predators, although these ones are domesticated, so they're a bit different. Very fascinating to hear the keepers talk about them and describe them, and they were very cute. They're just chilling around, didn't seem to even care what the keeper was doing, not even trying to play around or do anything like that. Would I fight a kangaroo? If I met the kangaroo from Tekken, like what's his name, Jack Jr. or whatever, yeah, sure. Oh, Roger Jr. Roger Jr. I would fight Roger Jr. Yes, of course. In fiction. There were a bunch of lizards, like monitor lizards as well, and this thing here on the right is actually a frog hotel, what they call. So they're actually made by children, and you just take like old pipes and stuff like that too, and you stick them into these pots, and they just left them around the zoo, and apparently frogs would occasionally go inside and just hang out in there as a little bit of shelter. Although I looked into as many of these as I could, and I couldn't find a single frog, but maybe it just wasn't the right season for them. But they called them frog hotels, and I thought that was pretty cute. It reminded me that there's like a TikTok of like a guy that he sees like a frog in his backyard hanging out on the post, and he builds like a bird cage for it, and then more frogs, or like a bird house, not a bird cage. He builds like a bird house for the frog, and the frog starts hanging out in it, and then more frogs start coming, so he makes the birdhouse even bigger. And then like a freaking raccoon comes along, and they're afraid the raccoon's gonna knock it over or pick a fight with the frogs, but the raccoon just hangs out with them too. So then he builds an even bigger hole for the raccoon, and there's like an entire like frog hotel, he calls it, on his fence. I remember that TikTok going around, and a lot of people sent it to me. It reminded me of that. There was an amphibian and reptile enclosure, or like house as well, because a lot of them have to be kept behind glass and in the dark. So there are a lot of giant snakes. Unfortunately, I couldn't get a lot of pictures inside here because everything was dark and everything was inside glass displays. I was able to get these snakes and this like leaf insect thing, which was huge. But I couldn't see, there were a couple frog exhibits, and I could only see some of the frogs I could see from a distance, like really far away, and they were like hiding among the leaves. And there were a couple of displays where I just couldn't find the frog at all. They just blended in really well, or they were hiding away from view. Okay, so I have to talk about this. So, like I said, when I was in Australia, I found it was really hard to get food between like 2:30 and 5 o'clock because a lot of places would just close between those times, or they would only serve breakfast and lunch, and then they would only serve dinner. It was really hard to find food. And by the time we got to the koala sanctuary and looked around and we wanted to eat, it was about 3 o'clock. And apparently, this place, it has only one cafeteria on site, and they close at 2. Apparently, they open at 10, and then they close at 2, so they're only open for 4 hours. I'm like, what? But the entire zoo is open till 5. So if you miss that, there's like no place to get food, or at least hot food. But they still had like a fridge area where you could buy like pre-made food and eat it. Although apparently that area closes off at like 3. So if you're like there between like 3 and 5, you just literally can't get food except from a vending machine. So I got this sandwich, this chicken BLT sandwich, It was the saddest sandwich I've ever seen because there was very few choices. Most of the choices were vegan or like vegetarian choices. So I got this chicken BLT, and it cost me $14. $14 for the saddest, most tasteless sandwich I've ever eaten in my life. Again, like I told you, food is freaking expensive down there. I was like, are you kidding me? $14. Hey, Ghost Nocturne, welcome to the stream. Thank you so much for following me and being a Froggy friend. Welcome in. That's 14 Australian dollars, which is about 12.64 Canadian, which is about 9.20 US, give or take. So expensive for a freaking tiny sandwich that had no taste. It was the saddest sandwich I've ever had in my life. We made it in time for the lorikeet feeding. So basically they take out all these like little feeders, and then all the lorikeets come by because there's a bunch of lorikeets that hang out in the trees, and they just came down in giant droves, and people could hold the feeders and they would just come down and eat from them and hang out on people's heads and stuff like that too. I was kind of just afraid of getting pooped on. I'm always afraid of getting pooped on when I come across a bird, because I've not been pooped on by a bird, but I've been very close to being pooped on by birds before. So it was crazy. They just came down in giant droves and just started eating and landing on people's heads and just hanging out. It was very cute, but also like I didn't want to get too close to the birds. There was also a platypus, and the platypus was super cute. He was just swimming around in little circles in his little enclosure, little small circles, paddling his little tiny feet, and once in a while he would come up and sit on the rocks. There were a bunch of birds. There were like parakeets, parrots, cockatoos, also all types of different birds. They're really hard to get pictures of because they're inside cages, and your phone camera really wants to focus on the cage bars instead of the birds. So these were a couple pictures I took that kind of turned out a little bit better, but they were very cute. I saw these chopsticks on my way out, and I thought they were so cute. I had to take a picture of them. Just little kangaroo chopsticks. But the koala sanctuary is located on a river, and it's beautiful. And if you want, you can actually take a boat there or a boat back, although it costs quite a bit of money. So we just took the bus back, but there were boats going in and out of the zoo. So we went to the Gold Coast, and the Gold Coast is a city that is outside of Brisbane. It's a separate city all on its own, and it has obviously the coast. It's beautiful, and luckily the train goes directly there, so you could take the train from Brisbane to the Gold Coast. So we took the train, and it was very nice. They actually have bathrooms, or toilets as they call them, on the train. So you could actually go to the washroom on the train, even though it wasn't even that long of a ride. I mean, it was like an hour to get to, well, I guess maybe somewhere between an hour and a half to get to the Gold Coast from there. But like this is not an intercity train. This is also like a public transit train within the city too. So it stops within the city and then leaves the city and goes to a few towns and stuff on the way out. So I was just surprised that it had a washroom for that type of train. Like I can understand like having a washroom on a train that travels between like cities in Europe, for example, like between countries and cities, but I was not expecting to see one just on regular public transport here, which is kind of neat. So when we got to the Gold Coast, we first went to get some food, and we ended up at this mall. And the mall had two food courts. One was like a regular food court, which is like your regular thing, like McDonald's, KFC, and more local restaurants. But then there was like another food court, which I think we'll call it like a food hall. But in the food hall, there were so many like farmers market type of things, like a lot of fresh fruits and bakeries and pastries, and a lot of Asian food as well. In fact, in the middle of the food hall, there was just like a grocery store. Like I have it pictured here on the left. Like literally, that's just in the middle of the store, in the middle of the food court. Just displays of food and produce, which I thought, on one hand, maybe a little unsanitary, because it's just literally in the middle of the hall. Anyone's walking past it. And also, this would never work in North America, because there'd be so many people just stealing from it. It'd be so easy to steal from this thing, because it's just everywhere in the middle, just stretching in the middle of the food court. But again, there were a lot of bakeries and a lot of Asian foods. And I was very impressed by some of the food, because it was like, this is food court food. It's so high quality. Like there was a place that just served a whole bunch of like Vietnamese like rice rolls here, and they looked so delicious. This was an Asian bakery, and they had like a cute, like a bunch of just, you can see a bunch of cute little cakes here, fashioned like dog heads in the corner. A lot of like really fancy looking like Asian bakery stuff that was um, uncommon types of things that I would see in a regular Asian bakery, I would say. Oh, oops, I went back. There were a lot of sushi places. Like there were like 4 or 5 different sushi places, and they all had really delicious looking displays. Like the one on the left had really fancy sushis. I had a few from here, and they were some of the best sushis I've ever eaten. Because of course this place is on the coast, right? So they're like fresh seafood. And then place on the right here, look at that. Like look at all that sushi just sitting there. I also found a lot of places down in Brisbane like to have their sushi rolls as like the full roll instead of like the cut up ones. Like they just have like the full roll. And personally, I find those a little bit inconvenient to eat. I'd rather they be cut up. But yeah, it looks super impressive seeing them all like stacked up like here. So we finally made it to the actual coast area, Burleigh Heads in the city of Gold Coast, and it was beautiful. We found a little inlet of water, and we actually did some paddle boarding. So my friends wanted to paddleboard, but like apparently if you go out on the coast, the waters are very choppy and there's a lot of people. But if you go into this little inlet here, it's very calm waters and there aren't too many people, which is kind of nice. So we rented some paddle boards and did some paddling around. We went up the creek, and I didn't take too many pictures because I left my phone behind because I didn't want it to drop into the water, obviously. There were these cute little cabins along the side of the beach that you could rent out or whatever. And there were so many people, but it wasn't too crowded in this area, and it was very, very nice. And the nice thing was, even though it was hot, and we put on sunscreen, obviously, but I don't think it was too bad because, again, it's their winter, and so the sun is coming down at an angle, so it's not as intense, despite the fact that you're exposed to so much of it, which is kind of nice. It wasn't like too hot, despite being in the direct sunlight for some time. More pictures of the beach. Again, here, there were only like 2 places to get food, and they closed at like 2 o'clock, and so we got there at like 3, and it was like, okay, where do we get food? I guess we can't get food. We did find one place to get food, but it was like half the building was under construction, so it was hard to even tell that they were open. But you can like come in through the back, and apparently they were still open, but the entire front area was being renovated. Then we went to the Burleigh Head National Park, which is a national park along the beach that you can go, and there's a bunch of trails that you can walk along. So we went on a little hike, and the trails were very well maintained, and it was very nice and shady in there. Lots of different types of tropical plants. It was very nice. And then there's like 2 or 3 lookout points where you can get a very, very nice view of the city and the coast. So we got to the top and we took some pictures. There's one of the lookout points here on the left and another one on the right. You could see how spread out the city is, the city of Gold Coast. You can see all the buildings and how far the beach spreads along. More walking through the national park. Once we got out of the national park, we just continued walking along the city's paths. They had free Wi-Fi all along the beach, which I thought was surprising. Very, very nice. A lot of sand, a lot of people hanging out. You can only swim between certain areas, of course. There were people surfing. There were people just hanging out. There were people with their dogs. It was very, very nice. So there was another day where we had a little spot of time and we didn't know what to do, so we found this park. And again, this park is inside the city, like all the other parks that I've been talking about. And this one's really particularly pretty, so we went inside and took some pictures of it. It was hard to find, though. Again, it felt like navigating a JRPG, even with the map of the city, because the city is kind of built on a hill. So there's a lot of like roads that go up and down or under or over certain paths, and it would look like some paths connect when they don't, or there'd be some that go underground or whatever. So this is Roma Street Parkland, and they had a few different gardens inside. They were very well maintained. So I took a picture of this because there was like a bush shaped like a kangaroo, which I thought was pretty cute. But there was like a special garden area here where they had like a bunch of little areas where you could walk. Very peaceful, very well maintained, very clean. One thing I will note though is I found it odd that, you know, where I'm from, I'm very used to there being trash cans everywhere where people can throw out their stuff. But in Brisbane, I felt like it was really hard to come across trash cans. Outside, you'd have to hold on. If you had any garbage, you have to hold on to it for a while. But I didn't see that much garbage, so I guess people must be used to it down there. Hey Lork, welcome to the stream. Thanks for stopping by. It's good to see you. Unfortunately, we already talked about a lot of the bird stuff, but I think there's still a little bit more bird stuff to come. Even inside a lot of restaurants, because like I said, a lot of restaurants you can go and you can just order with the QR code at your table and pay from your phone. The food comes to you, and then you can just leave because you don't need to wait for the bill. But a lot of times, I want to, like, especially for the ones where like it's more of like a fast casual place, I want to be able to throw out my stuff. Like I want to throw out the used napkins, or if they gave me like a plastic drink container, I want to be able to throw it out. And it'd be like, well, where's the garbage can? There'd be like no garbage cans inside the restaurant for me to throw stuff out, so I'd have to go find one. Like I found like there just was a distinct lack of garbage cans. So again, the garden here, very well maintained, very pretty. It's also gated off in some areas. I think it closes at certain times, so you don't have people like sleeping in it, like homeless people sleeping in it, which is kind of nice because they were able to maintain it. I think the city funds a lot of these like public works because they had a lot of signs about like public works, and again, all the public washrooms were very well maintained, and there were a lot of them everywhere. Thank you for the sleeveless redeem and the Colin Kirby and the stretch. I appreciate it. More of the garden, very pretty. We made it just in time too because they were closing like right as we were leaving too. It closes kind of early. So there was a different day that we went to Sunshine Coast, and Sunshine Coast is further away. It's not accessible by public transit, so you kind of need a car. But luckily, one of my friends was able to accommodate us, and we drove as a group. It was really, really fun. It's probably one of the few times in recent years that I've been able to hang out with a big group of people and just chill and do stuff, even people that I didn't really know that well. Of course, since COVID, it's been really hard to do that, and when you get older, it's harder to arrange groups of people to do things with in general. So it was really, really nice. It was a pleasant day. So we went to Sunshine Coast. Sunshine Coast is an area that is made up of a couple little parks, like national parks and different towns. So one of the towns is called Noosa. So this is Noosa National Park, and there's a bunch of different like paths you can take. Very beautiful along the beach. It was a nice shady day, like overcast, so it wasn't too hot, and also a lot of trees that gave you a lot of shade. Beautiful coastlines, a lot of surfers as well. We stopped to watch some of the surfers at some point because they were catching some pretty good waves. The waves were actually surprisingly large. And more view along the coast here. There were a lot of these signs here. Watch out, swooping birds. Kookaburras in this area may swoop on visitors in an attempt to steal food. And never feed the wildlife. Apparently, you could also, if you were lucky, you could see koalas in the trees, but we didn't see any here in the wild. And of course, you're not supposed to feed them and stuff like that too. But yeah, there were a lot of signs for not feeding the birds, especially the ibises back in town. More of the beautiful coast. It was actually a pretty long trail, so there were actually a lot of things to see. There was one part of the trail called Hell's Gates, and it's this giant chasm, dead end with a bunch of like choppy waters and rocks there at the bottom, which is why I'm assuming it's called Hell's Gates. This is kind of what the bottom of that area looked like. I also saw a dolphin as well. I was standing and watching the coast, and then there was this other guy, this older gentleman, and he pulls his wife aside. And he goes, "Look there! There's a shadow. There's a dolphin." And she looks, and there was like a little shadow, and then we saw like the tail of the dolphin come up. And then I was like, "Look, guys, look! There's a dolphin!" And then all my friends came over, and by then the dolphin was gone. And they were like, "Where is it, Kiro? Were you lying to us? Where's the dolphin?" And then so we watched the waves for like 10 minutes, and we couldn't find another dolphin. So we were like, okay. So we made it to the beach area. There was a long beach walk, and the beach area was really interesting here because the sand was squeaky. So if you walk along the sand, something about the formation of the sand, maybe there's like air pockets or something beneath it, it would like squeak as you walked on it. It would go like ee oop ee oop ee oop, and make some funny sounds. It almost felt like walking on like a rubber floor at times. And so we walked along here, and one of the jokes that people made while I was down there was apparently like the locals are so willing to take off their shoes and just walk barefoot everywhere. And I saw it a lot, especially along the beaches. They would just walk along the beaches barefoot and then just leave the beach and then just walk, through the wilderness onto the pavement barefoot everywhere. And so we saw a lot of people just walking these trails barefoot, which was crazy because there were a lot of like roots and sharp objects. And in fact, one of my friends, when we got to the beach, she was like, "Oh, okay, I'm gonna take off my shoes now and enjoy the sand." So she took off her shoes. She literally took 3 steps, and she cut her foot on a little sharp rock. And so we disinfected it, and I had a little like mini first aid kit, so we bandaged it up. But it was like it wasn't bad, but it was also like, wow, this beach really doesn't want you to walk barefoot. Like all the locals are walking around barefoot everywhere. One of us takes off our shoes, takes 3 steps, and then already there's an injury. But the waves were getting actually pretty choppy here as well. They were getting pretty big. You can see the clouds were starting to darken, so we headed back. On the way back, we stopped by this chocolate factory. Apparently, it was very well known in the area, the Noosa Chocolate Factory. And it's basically, there's like a cafe counter where you can have like coffee, hot chocolate, alcohol, and then there's like a chocolate factory and a shop, and then in the back you can see like people working and making the chocolates with the machines. Very, very cool. The whole shop was just full of these slabs of chocolate in different flavors and different types of things. So we had like raspberry and strawberry and peppermint and mango, and they would all come in like dark version, milk version, white version, different types of nuts. And basically you buy them by the kilogram. So if you buy a bunch of them and then you pay for them per like 100 grams or something like that. And I bought a bunch of half slabs because the full slabs were pretty big and I want to try a few of them. So I bought a bunch of half slabs. So this is my haul. I got these like little slabs. I got a smashed raspberry, some raspberry jelly, pineapple, smashed strawberries, mango. I also got some mango coated macadamias, some dark chocolate coated macadamias, and some freeze-dried raspberries. I haven't eaten all of them yet. I brought them home, but I've been eating through them here and there, and they're really good. They're really good. On the way back, we stopped by, there's this giant random pineapple off the highway, and it's literally just called the Big Pineapple. So we stopped by it to take pictures, and it's just a gigantic pineapple, and we were like, is this the attraction? Is that it? There's like a little food stand where they sell food. They sell they sell a bunch of fruits and drinks, including like little cut up pieces of pineapple and stuff. But yeah, it's just a big pineapple. But apparently there's actually like a wildlife zoo nearby, and you can take a train from the Big Pineapple into the zoo. I'd never heard of this zoo before, but it looked like it had a lot of stuff, but we didn't go to it. So on this day, we went to Mount Cootha and the Mount Cootha Botanical Gardens. And this is actually, again, inside the city. There's just a mountain and a bunch of parks and gardens in the smack middle of the city. Very impressive. So we started at the Botanical Gardens, and there was this cute like frog mascot, so I had to take a picture of it. And they had a lot of like pretty different types of tropical plants and a lot of like educational labels that talk about what those plants are, and a lot of like little art installations as well. So this is the cactus and bromeliad house. They had a bunch of carnivorous plants and cacti with little like info plates about each one and what they are. Did the frog have a name? I don't remember. He probably did. So there's like a cactus house, and it had like a bunch of carnivorous plants, and it talked about how there was like a sign talking about how these plants are like how they entrap insects and digest them and stuff like that too, and how some of the plants attract the insects by having parts of the plant resemble parts of the insect's reproductive systems. And so it would trick the insect into mating with the plant. And apparently, according to the sign, for some of these plants and insects, some of the insects actually prefer mating with the plants than with actual other insects, because that's how well it mimics their reproductive organs, allegedly. These are some really cool looking trees that I saw. Like, they look a little, the one on the left looks kind of unreal. It was very interesting. These are some more of the different plants they had. There's also a dome that they had as well. And inside there was like a basically like a greenhouse. This was the tropical display dome. I took this picture here in the center of it. I thought this was really cool. I zoomed my camera out to 0.5 times and it made a really cool effect. There's like a lake in the middle and there's like a big dome roof and a bunch of tropical plants. These were some of the interesting plants I found inside that dome. Very bright and colorful, very, very fascinating. Again, this was a very like educational experience. This is the fern house. There are a lot of ferns around inside it, hanging around, different types growing along the walls and stuff. Some of them look kind of interesting, very interesting shapes. There was a planetarium, the Sir Thomas Brisbane Planetarium. You can go inside and there's like a bunch of displays. Like there's a space suit. There's like a telescope. They have a bunch of information about a bunch of stars and planets. There was like a auditorium where they had shows. We had to pay for it to go inside. Hey Trim, welcome to the stream. Thank you so much for coming by. Welcome, welcome. Thank you so much for the raid. Hope you guys are doing well. Please go check out Trim Fandango, our friend, amazing Blade-themed VTuber. He's an amazing singer. He has such a silky, smooth voice. He's amazing at singing. Please go check out his covers. Go check them out on YouTube, Twitter, on Twitch. He also plays a bunch of different games, including Final Fantasy XIV. He's doing a main story playthrough that he plays through every Monday. Super fun guy. Please go check him out. Hope you guys had a fun time with Trim. What were you playing today? Did you have a good time? Thanks for stopping by. Welcome in. Say welcome to Awesome Guy. Welcome to the stream. And No Reason. Hello, hello. You're playing FF14. Good to hear, good to hear. I'm doing a talking stream where I'm talking about my trip to Australia that I took last month, so feel free to sit back and relax or go take care of yourself after your stream. I appreciate you being here. This was more of the botanical gardens here. There was like a big lake. A lot of people just coming here and just finding places to have picnics and stuff too. There were a lot of like pretty trees and stuff like that too. Here I took a picture of a bunch of like flowering pink plants. This was really cool. There was a kitchen garden. It's just an outdoor kitchen. And they had so many different edible plants growing around nearby. Although you're not supposed to pick the fruit or anything and eat it, because it's supposed to be used for educational purposes, and they apparently had like educational programs and shows that happen around here. While we were there was this bird that just flew in out of nowhere and landed on a lamppost, and he was holding like a small like melon in his talon, and then he just started eating it. He must have taken it from the kitchen garden somewhere, but he just flew in, landed on the post, and just started eating it and looking at us. And I didn't want to get too close to him because I didn't want to disturb him, but there were a couple birds that were eyeing him and very jealously, and then I guess some of them were trying to get some of the stuff from around here as well. Hey Bonnie, welcome to the stream. Thanks for stopping by. This is more of the kitchen garden. Again, a lot of edible plants around here. It was a very well-maintained garden too. And it's just out in the open. Like anyone can get to it. Like you don't have to pay a fee to get into this garden or display or anything. Again, I'd be confident if this was in North America, there'd definitely be people just stealing things, right? More of the kitchen garden. There was like a lemon tree. You could see like there's some rhubarb growing. One of my friends is an avid gardener and grows like little vegetables in his backyard, so he was very excited to see some of this stuff and see what they had. Some more interesting plants. The one on the right is actually gigantic. You can't really tell from the picture, but it was huge. I had to take a picture of it. And it looked like it was just made of like wax. It was so waxy as well. They had a bamboo collection where they had a whole bunch of different types of bamboo shoots of different species. So you can kind of see them sprouting out here. They grow really tall, and there's so many of them. Oops, I didn't mean to go back. Some more bamboo. Again, so much of it. So big. So tall. This was the Japanese garden, and there were actually a lot of people inside the Japanese garden, so I tried not to take too many pictures or tried not to get too many people inside the pictures. But it was very, very nice and serene inside there. They had a lot of little cherry blossoms and structures and various plants. So it was very calm, very pretty. Here's some more pictures of the Japanese garden. Little lake on the inside. You can walk around. This was probably my favorite part. This was the bonsai house, and it was so cool. I didn't know there were so many different types of bonsai, and when I was a kid, I actually tried to grow a bonsai plant. I bought one of those like little bonsai plant growing kits they sell to children, and it starts off as a seed, and you get a little patch of dirt. And I planted it, and I watered it, and I took care of it for like years. And man, it takes so long to grow a bonsai. I barely got like a stem out of that thing. And we every time we went on vacation, we would have someone like look after it or give it to a friend so they could water it. And it took forever and just never really grew. And so eventually I gave up. But I always thought it'd be cool to get a bonsai plant. I know you can buy like pre-grown ones too, but they were kind of expensive, and I didn't really know where to get them at the time. So seeing this kind of reignited my passion. I was like, I kind of want to grow a bonsai plant again. But there were so many though. I took so many pictures because this bonsai house had so many, like probably at least like 100 different species of bonsai plants, each with a little nameplate and a little description of it. Like super cool, all sorts of unique colors and shapes. And I didn't know the bonsai came in so many varieties. So here's some more, all set out on the tables again. Different shapes you can tell. Very well maintained. Very cool. They're just so beautiful. Some of them are like little mini groves themselves with multiple trunks growing out. Some of them are very flowering. Some of them have like multitude of leaves. Some of them have colorful flowers. Some of them droop over. Like the one on the upper left here, like droops downwards, which I thought was pretty neat. The one on the bottom left is like a unique shape and comes in like a big grove as well. They were super cool. Bonsais are super cool. So these ones as well. Yeah, the drooping is a feature. These ones I kind of took close-ups of because they were very tall. I want to get a good shot. But again, you can see like they come in such a variety of different shapes and sizes. Super cool. Unfortunately, the lychee tree lawn was closed when we got there. I took a picture of what I could, but I couldn't really see much because it was roped off. But I would have liked to see that, the lychee tree. Which I guess I might say, I've had this conversation with a lot of people before, but when it comes to the word lychee, I know you can spell it like this with a Y, or you could spell it with the IT, and you might pronounce it as lychee or lychee. So I know people ask me like, which one do you say or stuff like that too. But apparently, so what it is like lychee is closer to the Cantonese pronunciation, and lychee is closer to the Mandarin pronunciation. And if you're talking about the actual plant, apparently lychee is the name of the genus of the plant, of which there is only one species, which is the lychee. So the one spelled with the Y is the species name. The one spelled with the IT is the genus name, but there's only one species in that genus, so it doesn't really matter which one you say. They're both right, is what I'm trying to say. Yeah, I talked about this during the Blaze Blue streams, I think. Someone asked me, because we were talking about Lychee, the character, right? I'm sure there's more to it than that, too. This tree here on the left, when I approached it, I thought they were these gigantic bats on it. And I was like, whoa, those are huge bats. And they're not, like, behind a cage or anything. And then we got closer, and it turns out they're fake. Apparently there's a sign that says, like, it's for children. It's like, how many animals can you find on this tree? And there's actually a whole bunch of, like, plastic animals hidden around the tree. So, but they were huge. I was like, whoa, those are bats. What the heck? There's actually like a children's trail too, where they had a bunch of like activities for children to do along the trail. Like, can you spot how many whatever these that we've hidden or whatever? Oh yeah, we found a fig tree. It looked disgusting. Figs are so gross looking. And even more so if you know about like how they're created and stuff like that too. But it was neat. I'd never seen one in person before. These are some more interesting trees that we found. Very interesting shapes as well. It's really cool because this botanical garden, they really like try to have like a few species of every different type that they can get their hands on too. Not just like there was a section for just Australian ones, but there's also like sections for like foreign wildlife as well and plants. There's like a lookout point. We could look out at the city. There are a bunch of like little picnic tables and grills that you could use. Very nice facilities. Again, I think the public works department in this city does a great job with all the parks and stuff. More interesting wildlife. There was a lake. Again, this is all like inside the city too, which is kind of crazy. Like this entire botanical garden and mountain are enclosed by the city. So it's not outside the city. There's also like a subtropical rainforest area as well, although parts of it were closed off for maintenance. These plants are really interesting. The ones on the right here, they are so thin and papery. My friend described it really well. He said, it looks like they're still rendering. Like, it looks like when you're walking by that they haven't finished rendering in a game world or something like that. They look like they're incomplete just because they look so wispy. And it was fascinating. Thanks for stopping by, Timbit. Hope you have a good sleep. Catch you next time. So, that was the Mount Cootha Botanical Gardens. But if you actually want to go to Mount Cootha itself, because the Botanical Gardens are at the base of the mountain, you have to hike. And if you want, you can drive. There's actually a road that goes up it too. But we decided to hike up a bit. And it was about a 45-minute hike. It was pretty nice, actually. It was actually pretty steep. Like, it's actually pretty flat at the beginning, and then at the end, the last third of it, it just goes like woof, and it just goes straight up. But it was very nice. We made it just in time before the sun started setting. Again, because it was winter down there, the sun sets really early, like 4 or 5 o'clock. The sun's already going down, so the days feel really short. But it's really weird because it's like, oh, it's winter, so I know that the sun's setting, but also it's so nice and not snowy that I feel like there should be more to do, right? So a lot of days you'd have to make sure you do everything that you wanted to do in the daylight, right? Because otherwise it would just turn dark really quickly. So we finally made it to the summit lookout, and then you could overlook the city. There's a cafe at the top. You could take pictures. There were a lot of tourists up there. A lot of people just drove up again because there is like a road that goes up here. We decided to keep hiking down because there's also like a waterfall that you can check out called the Slaughter Falls, which is such a badass name. So we went to we hiked down a little bit more for another 30 minutes or so. It was faster because we were going downhill, and we made it to Slaughter Falls. And turns out this time of year, there's no water in Slaughter Falls. It's just a bunch of rocks. So there was no water at all. So we're like, oh, that's disappointing. But it was a nice hike. The paths were well maintained. Again, I think the Public Works or Parks and Recreation Department or whatever does a good job. So there was one day that we went rock climbing, actually, and it was really fun. We went to a place called Kangaroo Point, which again is in the middle of the city. And there was actually one day that we walked past it at night, where you could see it's actually lit up by a bunch of lamps, and there were people climbing at like 9 o'clock p.m. There were people climbing at night. It was kind of crazy. But we went during the day. We went really bright and early. It was nice because it wasn't too hot. It was still kind of shady, and there was also like a fog or like a cloud mist hanging over the city. So you got a really nice view of it along the water. So we made it to the place where we did the rock climbing, or we had to wait for our tour group or whatever. And we were sitting and waiting, and then we saw on the side of the building, they actually had little tick marks showing off where the water went up to during certain floods during times of the year. So you see at the bottom on the left, the blue plaque says 2022 flood, and there's a line. And then above it, there's a 2011 flood line. It says kayaks floated to this level. But then if you keep looking up, there's another one, flood 1974. And then if you keep looking up, there's another one, flood 1893. That's like over 1 story high. That's so high. And just for reference sake, this place was this far from the it was actually quite a distance away from the water, and the water still had a ways to go up there. So you can kind of see it's actually quite a distance to rise. Like that is crazy. Crazy, crazy, crazy. Could you imagine like what that would do to all the architecture and the infrastructure and what they probably have to do to try to like prepare for that? So we went climbing. We got our group together and rented our equipment, and it was very nice. And I don't usually go climbing often nowadays. A lot of my friends have been really into climbing recently, but they usually do indoor rock climbing, right? And I used to be really good at it as a kid, especially indoor rock climbing. And basically, I was really good at climbing up like freaking Spider-Man. But I haven't done it in a while, so I'm definitely out of practice. And my friends were more in practice, but I don't think any of us have done outdoor rock climbing before. Maybe one or two people have done outdoor rock climbing before. So outdoor rock climbing, I'll tell you right now, is a completely different beast than indoor rock climbing. Obviously, because with indoor, they actually they space out the things in a way that is doable, or doable depending on the difficulty level. Usually they color them based on difficulty level. But when it comes to an actual rock face, like it's not manufactured for you to be climbing a certain way. So there are some parts that are actually really hard because there might not be any like natural footholds or areas unless you're really flexible or really strong and able to pull yourself up. So when I was climbing, like some people were able to climb up to the top. We had like 3 ropes going, and so we also were belaying each other, which was kind of fun. But me, by the time it got to me, I actually got one of the later people to go. We each got to go about 3 times, which is nice. And I guess I got randomly assigned the wall that was probably the hardest one. And I made it to about a third of the way up, and then it was just flat. And apparently once you get past that part, it's easy. But it was so hard. Like I tried so hard to get up that. There were so many tiny footholds I was going for. I was like lifting myself up really high, trying to use like the belay to help me and stuff like that too. And I just couldn't get up that flat part. But I was stubborn. So I actually just clung there and hung on to it for a really long time, trying to like problem solve my way out. You can see me just clinging to the wall, and then I'm just like reaching out with my left hand, reaching out with my right hand, looking for a place to hold, testing a handhold, testing a foothold. And eventually I gave up after like 10, 15 minutes, stuck in that one spot. And by then I was so tired because I exhausted all my stamina just clinging to this one completely flat section of the rock, trying to climb up. So I was so tired. The sun was coming out, so we were no longer in the shade. So then by the time I got to my second and third climbing attempts, I was so tired. Even though they were easier walls, I couldn't get all the way up. And I felt kind of bad. I was like, oh, like I was just mostly being harsh on myself. I was like, oh, dang it. Like, I wish I got higher. I know I'm out of practice, but man, I shouldn't have exhausted all my energy on that first wall. And of course, when we were climbing, not everyone makes it to the top anyways. Like, a few people did because they were more seasoned, and a lot of people were more beginners and weren't able to get up too high. And everyone was being a good sport about it. Like, no one was saying anything. But me, I knew. I was like being hard on myself. I was like, dang, I really think I could do better. But yeah, it was fun though. It was really fun. And apparently, like, the tour group that we went to do this only does it on Saturdays, which is why we had to plan it on this day. But it was fun. Yeah, they had like a koala plushie mascot wearing their climbing gear at the rental place. It was really cute. But I had a lot of fun. It was fun. And I do enjoy rock climbing, so I feel like I should get back into it. On our way back, we took the City Cat, which is the name of their basically public transportation boat service. Their water buses, if you will. They have a bunch of bus stations for these boats across the city along the river. But it was cool. But honestly, it's like faster if you just take the land bus or an Uber or walk or something like that. So we wanted to because it'd be fun and it was our first time being there. But the problem was that like the boats would come by pretty semi-frequently, but each time it would come by, it would be almost full. Only some people would get off, and there's be so many people waiting because you'd be waiting like 20 minutes or so, and then they would only let on like a few people, and suddenly they're full. So you could be waiting there forever, and then suddenly you wouldn't be able to get on. And it's not like there's anyone there directing the line. There's no line, right? Everyone's just kind of waiting like you would at a train station or like a bus stop. So luckily we were able to get on and went down a few stops to get closer to our back to our accommodations. And it was interesting to do once, but it wasn't something that, I would recommend just because it did take us a lot longer to get back than if we just took the bus or took an Uber. No, it wasn't really quite like a ferry. They were smaller, and they were also different ones. Like some of them go in one direction, some of them go the other. The small one they call the kitty cat, and then the big one they call the city cat, which is kind of cute. I don't know why they named them after cats. We also went to the West End Markets, which was like a little market area with a bunch of like local stalls and shops. They're only open on Saturdays, so we made it just at the end when they were starting to close up after we went rock climbing. So the markets were really cool. There were a lot of like neat little things and like a lot of local businesses selling trinkets, jewelry, baked goods, vegetables, just food stalls in general. A lot of neat things there at the market. So unfortunately, again, they were kind of closing up by the time we got there. But there were a lot of neat things. I got some food. I ate some nice okonomiyaki because I don't usually have the chance to eat okonomiyaki. Yeah, again, closes at 2 p.m. I tell you, everything closes at like 2 o'clock here. It's like impossible to get anything between 2 o'clock and 5 o'clock. Yeah, they also had some like really cheap vegetables too. Like these vegetables were like really, really cheap and really, really large too. Locally grown. Really, really nice. I wish I could get more food here, but again, they were closing up and also there really wasn't like sitting locations. So whatever you bought, you had to carry around, and it was just hard to do when, if you had something that was a little bit delicate or needed a little bit more finesse to eat. And in the areas that were seating, well, not seating, but like green grass areas where you could sit down, or like people would sit on like tree stumps or little like parking posts, the ibises were everywhere. Again, the bin chickens were everywhere. So you had to be really careful because they would just swoop up and take people's food if you weren't careful about it. So that's why also I didn't want to get too much food. But yeah, they call them bin chickens. The ibises, they call them bin chickens because they dig through your bins. So now we're on to the food section. Yay! The part you've all been waiting for, all the food I ate during my trip. So again, down there, it's kind of a melting pot of cultures, just like you would in North America most of the time. So it's not like there's a specific type of food culture there per se, but there is a lot of seafood because obviously they're on the coast. And we went to a variety of places, and I talked already before about how food in general is expensive. But again, you don't have to tip, which is nice, and taxes are all included, so everything is an even dollar amount or an even 50-cent denomination, which is really, really handy as well. I won't talk too much about that because I already did earlier, but just something to note. So the first day we went there, we stopped by an Asian place because we were really hungry. We just got off the plane. I had some braised pork belly rice bowl. We also shared some rainbow dumplings. Each color of dumpling had a different type of meat inside, which was pretty nice. This was the place that had the robot server that came by, even though the restaurant was pretty small and didn't really require it. But it was really nice. I'm such a sucker for pork belly. It's one of my favorite like meats in general. So obviously I had to pick it when I saw it. But this place also had a lot of like noodles and stuff too, so you could have. On this day, I was just walking around by myself because my friends were all busy or sick. A lot of us caught a cold while we were down there, and I eventually caught the cold too, although luckily I caught it after the wedding, so I didn't have to worry about it when I was at the ceremony with everyone. But this day, I was just walking around. I got the iced chocolate and then the pear tart in the... Actually, this was in the museum. And iced chocolate's very common down there. I don't know about you, but we don't really get iced chocolate where I am. And, like a hot chocolate, but with ice, which is, a simple thing, but it's just not something we serve on menus around here very often. Although sometimes Tim Hortons has their, what they call the creamy chocolate chill, but they don't have, I think they discontinued it, but I used to get it, but it was a nice, basically it tasted kind of like chocolate milk with whipped cream, but whatever. Sometimes I would get the iced chocolates whenever I could, because I didn't always want to have coffee I'm not a coffee person. I like the taste of coffee when it's sweet, but it's more of a treat to me, and I don't always want to drink coffee all the time because it also makes you need to go to the washroom. So, and also the caffeine doesn't really do anything for me anyways. So, I like having iced chocolate when I want to have something cold, but I don't want to have an iced coffee. And again, every place seems to serve alcohol as well. I had a nice cookies and cream milkshake and a smash burger from a place a friend recommended to me. It was okay. I don't think it was worth recommending personally, but it was okay. Um, this is a Moreton Bay bug risotto. And so Moreton Bay is an area nearby Brisbane, and a Moreton Bay bug is this thing down here. It looks like a small lobster. It's basically like a lobster if you only had like the lobster tail, more or less. And it tastes kind of like a cross between a shrimp and a lobster. So a lot of places serve Moreton Bay bugs here, but a lot of people just call it bugs. So a lot of times on menus here, you'll see areas where it just says bugs, and you think, oh, bugs, what are they eating? But when they say bugs, they actually mean Moreton Bay bugs. Like, we went to a restaurant where it's like, like beef, chicken, shrimp, bugs. And we're like, what's bugs? But luckily, the first place we went to that had Moreton Bay bugs actually wrote out the whole name, so we knew what it was. So I had this Moreton Bay bug risotto. It was delicious. It had chunks of it in it. Again, they taste like a cross between a shrimp and a lobster. Not quite lobstery enough, but not quite shrimpy enough, somewhere in between. I also got this Black Forest brulee for dessert, which is great. I had this cookies and cream French toast. You guys know I have a sweet tooth, so I couldn't resist. I had a pina colada smoothie to go with it. I love pina colada. I love pineapple and coconut. So anytime I had the chance to have a pina colada anything, I would take it. So it was pretty good. It was pretty good. These were actually served to me, and I don't remember what they were, but the first one was like a type of tempura, fancy tempura. The one in the middle is like a pork belly taco in a cabbage wrap type of thing. I don't remember what the third one is. It had like caviar in it, but I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was good. Did I enjoy getting caught in the rain? I didn't get caught in the rain. Actually, did it even rain on us while we were there? I think it might have rained a couple times in the evening, but I never actually got rained on while I was there at all. Maybe you just got luckier the time of year. No, they weren't cheese balls. Those were like pieces of like some type of cream. This is on the left, smoked duck breast with smoked cauliflower puree. It was really good. I love duck as well. Duck is also one of my favorite meats. Not because I specifically like duck, but because duck is kind of only served at places that are kind of fancy. So usually when you get duck, it's prepared in kind of a fancier way. So that's one of the reasons why I like duck. On the right side here, I'm blocking some of the text. It's torched meringue with white chocolate and matcha creme patisserie with strawberry gum sorbet and candied. Oh, sorry, let's just say candied. I was quickly writing this down like literally 10 minutes before the stream. Rice puffs. It was pretty good. The matcha cream was very, very delicious. On the left side here, I had a Koroke Benedict, which is Japanese-style Wagyu croquettes with avocado, which they just call avo, poached eggs, tonkatsu hollandaise, shochang mayonnaise, togarashi, and tenkatsu. It was really good. It was really good. Down there, at least in Brisbane, Wagyu is so common. Like any place that has beef, anything, it's usually Wagyu, and I love that. So I definitely took the chance. I had a really good steak while I was down there too, and after that steak, every time I saw Wagyu on a menu, I would try to gravitate towards it if I could, and it was so good. On the right side, there's chicken and bonito chintan ramen. So the broth was like chicken and bonito, and they had dried bamboo shoots, king oyster mushrooms, smoked duck breast, chasu, chicken breast, soft egg, and black truffle sauce on that like fancy spoon that kind of rests on the sill of the bowl, right? This was from that, or on the left side, this was from that little cafe inside the city hall in the museum. I had some sour cherry pound cake. It was very delicious. And some fruit tea that was made of cranberry, blueberry, dragon fruit, and goji berries. The tea was actually in a teapot, and I hadn't poured it yet, so there's just an empty teacup there. It was really good. On the right side here is a poke bowl. I do like poke bowls, although usually I like to build my own poke bowls. But I went to this place because it just sounded interesting. So I got a salmon poke bowl with turmeric rice and rice puffs. And they also had a chicken bone broth appetizer that you can get for only a couple extra dollars. So I got the bone broth, and it was really good. And this was on the day that like I got sick that morning. So the bone broth, I think, really helped my throat. It felt really good. And I think it helped me not have a sore throat too bad for the next couple of days. But it was quite good. There was a gelato place that was near a bunch of restaurants that we were staying near. So we stopped by there a couple times. A lot of times they would just be so busy. Like there'd just be a giant line out the door. So we would go when it wasn't too busy. And we went on at least 2 occasions. And the first time I got a mascarpone and strawberry gelato, which was very tasty. And then on the second occasion, I got a passion fruit and cheesecake crumble gelato. And this was really good because it had little chunks of passion fruit and little chunks of cheesecake crumble, like the crust. But it felt like they were just evenly dispersed throughout the gelato. So whenever you got a bite, you get the perfect like ratio of little crunchy like sweet bits and crunchy like savory bits, and then the whole thing kind of had a cheesecakey kind of flavor to it. So it was very tasty. I like it. These were actually from the food hall that I was showing you guys, the one that had the grocery store smack in the middle of it. Again, I was super impressed that these were from the food hall, from like fast food essentially. I had a soft shell crab bao burger made with like bao buns, and it was so good. It was probably one of my favorite meals. It wasn't my favorite meal when I was down there, but it was one of my favorite ones, which again, from a food court, so good. I love soft shell crab, and I don't often have a chance to eat it. So it was very, very nice. It had this like sweet chili sauce on it. CB, welcome to the stream. Thank you so much for stopping by. On the right here, this was some of the sushi from that sushi display that I served you guys earlier. And I really wanted the crab leg sushi because it was a big chunk of crab leg meat. And I also saw they had like a lobster salad one and a torch scallop. I like those, so I got them. But I didn't want to eat too much because this was right after I ate my soft shell crab bao burger, and we were about to go hiking. So I didn't want to eat too much, but I really wanted to try the sushi from this place. That crab leg sushi was so good. It was so thick and meaty. I've never had like just a big piece of crab leg meat that was just so big and pure and delicious and fresh. Again, from a fast food place. Like, I was so impressed. I wish that I just got 3 of those crab leg sushis instead of 3 different things, because it was just so good. But I didn't want to go back and get more because I didn't want to overeat before we went exercising. But I cannot understate how good that crab leg was. It was just so good. Yeah, it was a little like sheet of newspaper that they served the bao bun on, and it actually had like a little old-timey newspaper article on it, but I couldn't read it because it was all covered in sauce. Were there any Moreton Bay bug sushis? I don't think so, but I could be wrong. I wouldn't be surprised if it existed, but I don't remember seeing one. But I'm sure there was some. I had a crab lasagna one night, and it was probably the best lasagna I've ever had. It doesn't really look that good on camera because the sauce had like, you can see like the oil on it and stuff like that too, but it was so good. But it was also really expensive, and it was kind of small, so I was still kind of hungry afterwards, but it was delicious. On the right here, I had a Wagyu rib cap with onion chutney and foie gras. It was very good. It was very good. Unfortunately, again, it was kind of small, so I was still pretty hungry. I wish I ordered a side to go along with it. My friend got like steak frites from the same place. And because of his fries, he was full, and I ate some of his fries too, but I was still so hungry afterwards. But I spent so much money, I didn't want to buy more food. Now, this place was a little bit more fancy, so I can understand that the serving sizes were a little bit smaller. But, like, again, like I said earlier on my stream, I feel like portion sizes in general were just smaller everywhere, and maybe it's just because I'm used to, like, American portioning. But I was still pretty hungry after almost every meal that I had. And I would have to go back to the Airbnb and snack on stuff afterwards, because I'm a big eater. But it was delicious. It was delicious. There was one night that we went to a restaurant that was it was an Asian and Peruvian fusion cuisine, which was really interesting. I've never heard of or had a fusion of Peruvian cuisine with Asian cuisine before. Specifically Chinese cuisine, but I think it was just Asian in general. But we had like a bunch of share plates here because we got like a table set. So we had some kingfish ceviche, which was really, really nice. And then we had oysters and smashed cucumber salad, which is also very, very nice. The oysters were very good. I like the oysters. It came with some chipotle lime chicken wings and some stir-fried egg noodles with beef, vegetable, oyster sauce, and coriander. So these were very, very delicious. They also served us guava cheesecake bites, and that was an interesting combination that was really, really good. And that was also from the Peruvian place. Now, on the right here, I had some baked scallops, sweet and sour, apple, and sea urchin butter. And I love scallops too. I love scallops so much. So I was very happy to get this. It was delicious. Now, my only complaint about this dish is that as garnish, they served all the scallop shells on like big chunks of like rock salt. And it was so salty, but it was supposed to be garnish. But the problem is, if you got even 1 grain of that salt into your scallop, it would potentially ruin the entire taste of the thing, which is a problem because the scallop was still attached to the shell. So you still had to kind of like jiggle it out. And by doing so, on the shell, which was resting on the bed of rock salt, you were likely to accidentally get a piece of rock salt into it. It was delicious though, but I wish that they didn't serve it on the rock salt, because you definitely weren't supposed to use the salt to taste it, because it was just so freaking salty. Oh yeah, these were some fries that I got with my scallops. I learned my lesson, and I was like, I'm gonna order a side of fries because because I knew I'd be hungry if I didn't. Again, going back to the topic of food down there being expensive. Like some places, if you want to get a side of fries with your meal, and not this place, just to be clear, not this place, but a lot of places, if you want to get a side of fries with your meal, it was really expensive. Like $10 Australian or $12 Australian. There was one time I did get a side of fries, or my friend got a side of fries for $12 Australian, which is about $10.85 Canadian, or about $7.90 American. So $7.90 USD for a side of fries at a restaurant. Like, that is crazy. That is crazy. But I did like these. Again, these ones were not that much, but they were nice because they were nice thick cut, and I do like my fries nice and thick cut where I can taste the potato. And I also got a dessert from that place. It was a Bailey's Irish Cream Creme Brulee. I love creme brulee. And it came with pistachio biscotti and hazelnut ice cream, which hazelnut ice cream was a perfect finish for that combination. That was a very good combination. So there were Krispy Kremes down there. One time we actually stopped by a gas station where there was like a McDonald's and a Krispy Kreme and a KFC, and I couldn't resist getting Krispy Kreme because they don't have Krispy Kreme where I'm from. I know a lot of places in the States, very common. I know when I go down to the States and I get excited about Krispy Kreme, my friends are like, what are you talking about? That's just normal stuff. But you don't understand. I don't have it. But the thing is, where I'm from, you can buy original Krispy Kreme donuts at the grocery store. They do sell the boxed, like, Krispy Kremes, but they only come with the original flavor. So I like to try the different flavors. So I tried an apple pie and a cookies and cream donut and they were okay. They weren't really that anything special. But I still admit I do like the original Krispy Kremes. And as a caveat, they only really taste good if you microwave them for like 10 seconds. So if you take like a regular Krispy Kreme donut and you microwave it, it gets like really fluffy. It tastes like almost like cotton candy-ish. And for me, that's exciting because I only get to eat a Krispy Kreme donut, or I only take the effort to buy and eat a Krispy Kreme donut once every like 6 or 7 years. So for me, it's exciting. Only because of the scarcity factor. I admit it's not the best thing in the world, but it's just fun. The original one, 10 seconds in the microwave. These donuts were okay. They weren't anything special, but it was fun. I said before that I liked iced chocolates, and iced chocolates are a very common thing in Australia, which you can't really order that, at least where I'm from, usually. Even though it's a pretty common thing. Like, it's just, like, hot chocolate's pretty common. Why can't I just get hot chocolate with ice? But, so whenever I stopped at a place and I wanted to drink something cold to cool myself down, and I didn't want an iced coffee, and usually iced coffees aren't sweet enough for me, so I would get an iced chocolate. And so I had a lot of iced chocolates when I was down there, and it seemed like almost as I went through my trip, every subsequent time I got an iced chocolate, it progressively got fancier and fancier. Like the first time I got one, it just came in a coffee cup, right? It was just literally a hot chocolate with ice in it. And I was like, oh yeah, that's good. And then the second time, they gave it to me in this like, the plastic container with the straw, and they had little like flakes of cocoa on it. And I was like, okay, that's kind of fancier. And then the next time I got it, they gave it to me in like a fancy glass with like powdered cocoa on top, and it had like layers that you had to stir. It's like super fancy. And then the next time I got it, they gave it to me with like whipped cream and chocolate sauce and like chocolate powder. It's like every time I got one, it got progressively fancier. I would have been happy with the first one. I would have just happy with the regular one, but yeah, each time I got one, it just got better and better somehow. Although the more whipped cream there is, it does get a little bit more unwieldy to eat, because then, you got to try to stir it. They give you like the paper straws, which kind of get soggy. It's kind of hard to do it without making a mess and spilling it. Usually by the time you're done drinking, there's still a layer of like whipped cream at the bottom or whatever. It's still good. We also went to a Thai restaurant, and it was so good. It was so good. I had a drink. It was like called a lychee paradise. I don't know what was in it, but it was good. Came with side of coconut rice, and it was really good coconut rice. I got an entire soft shell crab to myself, served with salt and pepper and Thai seasonings. It was so good. It was so good. I said before, I love soft shell crab. I don't usually get a chance to eat soft shell crab that often, so it was so good. And I was eating even when I finished the crab, I was like eating all the seasoning and stuff too. It was so tasty. And then my friend got some battered Moreton bay bugs, which were also good. It looked like it had the similar type of seasoning as well. I had a piece. It was good. Not as good as my crab though, but it was good. We went to a hot pot place, and it was the type of hot pot place where all the raw ingredients are, on the shelves, and you take some tongs, you put them all into a pot, and then you give it to the cashier, they weigh it, and you tell them which soup base that you want. So I got a bunch of things that I like, and then I got the tonkatsu pork bone base. And I'm sorry to say, it was quite disappointing. I think the problem with that type of hot pot, where you collect your ingredients and then they cook it for you and then bring it to your table afterwards, is that, some things in the hot pot require different amounts of cooking time. So if you cook everything all at once, some things get overcooked and some things get undercooked, and they don't get a chance to absorb the taste of the soup. Because when I have a personal hot pot that's bubbling on my table, right, I can put things in at my leisure, and if I leave things in there long enough, they do, soak up the soup and take on the flavor of the soup. I found that this one that they gave me, nothing tasted like the soup base. They didn't have a chance to soak up the soup at all, which is a bit disappointing. Also, the restaurant had its tables decorated with like money. So the table had a glass top, and then underneath it was like just a bunch of money. It looks kind of cool. But if you're wondering why there's a bunch of like money bills underneath my tray, that's why. It's not that we just coated our table in money. It came pre-coated with money. I also had this rib fillet steak sandwich with onion jam. It was really good. Onion jam is really good. I need to go find me some onion jam now because it was very tasty. Oh, this was the pork okonomiyaki that I got from the West End markets. I had to eat this kind of cautiously, surrounded by ibises eyeing me as I sat on a log in the middle of like a field of grass and wildlife. And then there was also this really big red velvet cookie I got. I bought this after I finished rock climbing because they had a little stand, and I really was really hungry, so I was like, I need this right now. Yeah, it was a Hiroshima style pork okonomiyaki. Very good. I love okonomiyaki, but again, not something I get to eat too often. So yeah, eating in a PvP enabled zone. Yeah, all those ibises just eyeing me, right? Very, very. I mean, they weren't like aggressive, but like if you left your food unattended, or if you like stretched out your food in your arm and looked away for a split second, you never know what would happen, right? But it's not like they were aggressively attacking you. But this is a strawberry matcha latte that my friend got. It just looked really pretty, so I wanted to take a picture of it. And then I got a strawberry lychee cake, again with one of my iced chocolates. It was very good. It came on this cute little stand as well. Ooh, this was a really good steak. I had a ribeye filet steak with sous vide mash and potato crisps, charred shallots, and Shiraz jus. It was really, really good. I was showing this to a friend, and they joked like, "I heard you like potatoes, so I put potatoes on your potatoes." That's basically what it is. You have potato crisps on top of a bed of mashed potatoes, which I thought was kind of funny. This is a apple crumble cronut. So a cronut is like a donut and a croissant crossed together. I actually had this at the airport as I was leaving. It was pretty good. Again, a little bit expensive, but I was hungry and I saw it and I really wanted it. So, oh yeah, of course I had to have a pina colada with my steak. So, leaving a lot smoother than arriving. The airport had all these cute like Olympics things, these cute little kangaroos with boxing gloves. I had to take a picture of it. The Olympics were happening while we were gone, so we watched some of the opening on TV, but I think the opening happened at like 4 a.m. Australian time, so it wasn't convenient for us to watch live, so we just had to watch it afterwards, but it was fun. And it was something to watch in the Airbnb when we were finished and didn't have anything to do. I also found the kangaroo jerky and the crocodile jerky at the airport and bought some and took home. Kangaroo jerky, kangaroo meat is very gamey. So if I had to describe it, it's kind of like venison or kind of like lamb. So I'm not a big fan of like super gamey meats, but it was interesting to try. And again, we didn't see kangaroo meat at all when we were there, except for at that one food truck that was closing down. And I think at one supermarket, but of course we didn't want to buy raw kangaroo meat and bring it back to the Airbnb and cook. There's just too much work. So the crocodile meat is kind of like chicken. Kind of tastes like chicken, but maybe like a little bit aquatic, like a little fishy, but not quite. It was okay. It's not like I would go and snack on these things. Now, the thing I was most worried about was bringing these back to Canada because I bought these at the airport at the duty-free shop, and I was like, I'm going to bring them home and try them and share them with some friends and family. And then I was texting some friends and being like, hey, look at this jerky I brought. And one of my friends was like, that might not go through customs, because one time they went through customs and their beef jerky got confiscated. So I was like suddenly worrying. I was like, oh. So I was at the airport and I was like searching on my phone, going through the customs website, trying to find out if I was allowed to bring these. And the annoying part was I found conflicting information. So I found like on their official site, if you read on one part of the site, you have to like go through a bunch of menus. You have to be like customs, animal products, meat, Australia, mammals, kangaroo meat. And then it says like, you need a permit. And I'm like, well, that doesn't help me. And then I couldn't find the crocodile one because the crocodile was under like animal products, meat, Australia, other, and then it just said, depends on what it is. And I was like, well, that doesn't help me at all. But then I checked the other site, and then it said like, oh, as long as your meat is sealed and it is cooked meat that doesn't need like refrigeration, for example, it's fine. So I was like, well, that sounds like it's fine. But I was so worried because I also didn't want to eat it all at the airport before I left. Because also, one, I didn't know what that would do to my digestive system, and I want to share it. And I didn't want to eat before getting on the plane. So I was like, I'll risk it. I'll take it with me. So I took it with me, and then I brought it back to Canada, and so declared it on customs. So I went through customs, and they were like, okay, you declared that you have this. You need to go wait in this line. So after I finished going through the line, I had to go wait in a different line. Got to the front of the line, and then they were like, oh, okay, you have animal products. You need to go to this line. So we went back to this other line and waited. And then, luckily, turns out it's okay to bring any type of jerky into the country except for beef jerky. Beef is the only one they don't let you. And they didn't explain why, but if I were to guess, it's probably because of mad cow disease, which is what I'm guessing. So, which makes sense, I think. We had a big mad cow scare many years ago, and it's just been, keeping it under control. So that makes sense to me. So apparently, if you want to bring back any jerky, any type is fine except for beef. Now you know. Also, I forgot to tell the story about when we were landing, but customs in Australia and New Zealand are very strict. And so they make sure to tell you on the airline when you land, they like play a video and they tell you, like, declare everything just in case. If you have something that you're not allowed to have, but you declare it, they don't charge you a fine. But if you have something and you're not allowed to have it, and you don't declare it, then they can fine you, right? And they don't play around because Australia and New Zealand, being islands, they want to protect their ecosystems, right? They want to be free of certain parasites, diseases, things that would disrupt their ecosystem, wildlife, things like seeds, for example, right? And so they tell you as well, even food that they serve you on the airplane, you got to be careful with. So if they give you like a fruit on the airplane, like a banana or an apple, you cannot take that into the country. You need to eat it or throw it away. If you declare it and then they take it from you and throw it away, it's fine. But if you don't declare it and try to sneak it in, and then like the dog comes around and sniffs it or whatever, they charge you money, right? But they do warn you. I saw a bunch of people talking about this on YouTube just the other day about how people got like, they were given an apple or a banana on the plane and then they landed and then they didn't declare it on customs and then they got fined like $200. But maybe the airline didn't do a good job of doing this, but at least on my airline, when we were landing, like they had a PA announcement, they played a video about it, telling you about it. There were people telling you about it when you land. There were big signs like declare everything. Like even if you're not sure, safer to declare it, that we won't charge you like a fine, right? And it was things like, animal products, fruits and vegetables. If you have any like dirt or something on a pair of shoes that you like went hiking with or brought to a farm and there's like a lot of dirt, you should also declare it as well so they can either have a look at it or ask you where it's from or clean it. Again, to make sure there's no like parasites or like foreign seeds that you're bringing into the country, for example, that could disrupt the ecosystem. So, but they list all these things and they tell you again, if you're not sure, declare it. It's better than getting fined. So those videos of people on YouTube getting charged so much money for all these things that they apparently brought in because the airline gave it to them and they weren't supposed to, someone obviously didn't warn them well enough about that, but I can understand the reason for it as well. I guess depending on how strict they are depends on, I guess, the rules of the time. I think because some of the videos people were talking about on YouTube about people being charged $200 for apples or bananas, they look like old videos too, so maybe those are just old and they didn't do a good job of explaining it back then. I don't know. Anyways, I just thought that was interesting and worth talking about. I should have talked about that when I was talking about the arrival, but I forgot. Oh yeah, on the plane ride back, I finished watching The Last of Us, the last 3 episodes. It was very good. I also finally watched Everything Everywhere All at Once, which I've been wanting to watch this movie for a while, but I never got the chance because when it was in theaters, I actually didn't even hear about it until it started like being nominated for awards and stuff. And by then it was already, not in theaters anymore. And I don't have that many streaming services and I don't want to pay for that many streaming services. Because, everything's on a different streaming service nowadays. And honestly, I've been really wanting to watch it. and I actually had the bare minimum amount of information about it. So going into it and only having like the surface level information about what it's about was probably the best decision because I was so surprised by things. I was emotional about things. I was enjoying myself. It had really interesting themes and visuals and stuff. It was really good. I'm glad. Obviously, watching it on a plane is not ideal, but I still enjoyed it. Also, it's long enough that it did take up, a few hours of my plane ride, which was nice because again, I can't fall asleep on planes. So if I can find something that can keep my attention for a few hours, that's great. Because a lot of other movies, I would get bored partway through if I tried watching them on the plane because they don't usually have a great selection of stuff, usually. I did see they had Madam Web, though. My friend was like, you should watch Madam Web. Maybe that'll help you fall asleep. But I did not partake in the Madam Web. Hey, Kiro from the future here. I remembered after the stream that there was one section here I forgot to talk about a few things. So I'm going to add this in the VOD, which is why the chat box is empty now. So on the flight back, I forgot to mention. So just like on my flight to Australia, I had the middle seat on the way back because I was traveling primarily with one friend who wanted the aisle seat so that they could easily go and stretch their legs or go to the washroom or whatnot. And I wanted to sit next to them. So I got the middle seat. And on the flight to Australia, I got lucky that the lady at the window seat didn't even need to get up, much like myself. So on the way back, I had another lady next to me at the window seat, and she had to get up a few times to go to the washroom, maybe a few more times than I would have preferred. But that's fine, I understand. It's a bodily function, a long flight, I get it. But I don't know. She was a little bit strange. So this lady basically made like almost a cocoon for herself. So she grabbed like all these blankets, she bundled herself up, and then she also tucked her blankets behind the tray on the chair in front of her. So she would tuck her blanket on the tray, and then she would lift the tray up and, park it on the person's chair, thus creating like a full cocoon for herself, more or less. But the thing is that, when she did that, it meant that every time she moved, the person in front of her could feel the vibrations through their chair. So eventually the guy got tired of it and turned around and was like, can you stop pulling on my chair? And she was like, oh, I'm sorry. I thought that, I just have my blanket tucked into my tray. But she continued to do it, although I think she stopped trying to wiggle around too much to bother the person in front of her, but she still kept her blanket up there. And then she would like take off her shoes and then put her feet up on her chair and like curl up into a ball. And again, I get it. Plane ride is uncomfortable, so you want to make yourself comfortable. Whatever. I see lots of people putting their feet up on the chair or taking off their shoes, although personally I would not do that. But whatever. I figured that's why she wanted the window seat too. But even stranger still was her boyfriend was sitting 2 rows ahead of us. So not the row immediately in front of us, but the row 2 rows ahead of us. And he had an aisle seat. So, maybe they didn't plan to have seats together because you do have to pay extra to choose your seat number. So maybe they just didn't want to do that. Luckily, our flight wasn't completely full, so her boyfriend actually had an empty seat next to him. And so the weird thing was, she would constantly be trying to talk to him, even though he was 2 rows away from us. She'd be like, hey, I saw this show on the screen that I think you would like. You should watch this. Or like, hey, I think we should, are you going to eat this? Or like, what do you want? Or do you want my extra bun or something like that? Because I don't want to eat it. And so she would constantly be trying to talk to him, even though he's 2 rows away from us, which is really weird. And then every time she would leave to go to the washroom, right, we would all have to get up so that she can leave. And then she would come back, so we'd all be like, oh, she's back. So we'd be getting ready to get up from our seats and let her back into her seat. But instead, she would just pass our row and then go and talk with her boyfriend. She would stand in the aisle and just talk with her boyfriend for like 10, 15, 20 minutes at a time. So the whole time she'd be standing there talking to him 2 rows ahead of us. And me and my friend would be like anticipating or waiting for her to come back so we could, you know, get up from undo our seatbelts, get up from our seats, let her into her seat, and then settle back down. Especially if we were, if you're in the middle of watching a show or if you're trying to fall asleep and you know that you're going to need to get up soon, right? You might pause your show and wait a little bit, or, anticipate that, oh, I won't be able to fall asleep within the next 5 minutes because I need to get up and let this lady in. So we'd be waiting for her and she'd just be standing there talking to him for like, again, 10, 15, 20 minutes. And I don't know why she would not just sit next to him. Again, maybe it's because she really wanted the window seat to make her cocoon, and she wouldn't be able to do that if she sat next to him in a middle seat. But it was just very strange because during the last hour of the flight, she did actually go to the washroom, come back, and then talk to him, and then sat down next to him, and did not return to her regular seat next to me at all for the rest of the flight. And it was just very strange to me. It was very strange, and I couldn't quite wrap my head around it. The flight back was also kind of interesting because, like I mentioned, the flight there, it's quite long, and because of the time zone difference, you basically lose an entire day. So this time on the way back, you gain the day back. So we left Australia Sunday morning, and then when we flew back, we arrived Sunday morning. So it was like no time had passed, except for the fact that we were dead tired upon landing. It was just a really strange feeling. It was really good to be back though, because at almost 3 weeks, maybe close to 2.5 weeks, that was probably my longest trip I've taken yet away from home. Usually my trips are only about 1 week or 1.5 weeks. I don't like trying to make it that much longer, just because, at some point, vacation's nice, but it is nice to come back and rest in your own bed. And at some point, it is, a bit tiring to be away for so long for a place that you can call home, especially when you're so far away. But we did make the trip long because, one, my friends want to stay longer, and, we traveled quite a distance to go to the wedding, so we might as well make use of our time there. So I'm glad. But man, I was missing streaming. I was missing playing my video games. I was missing talking to you guys. I was missing being able to do stuff on my regular desktop computer while I was gone. So it was nice to be back. But I'm glad that we took the trip and did that as well. But overall, otherwise, like, the flight was fine. Food was okay. It wasn't like outstanding, but it was not bad. So yeah. Oh yeah, and something else I wanted to mention before I cut out of this. Also, because I was going to a wedding, I don't know if I mentioned this already, because I was going to a wedding, I also had to pack my suit, which was also kind of new for me, because I don't usually pack that much when I go traveling, right? So, and because I was gone for so long, like, we did have access to laundry and stuff, but I did, I packed quite a few clothes, including things like, like lots of socks, for example, because I would need a lot of socks. But I had to use a bigger luggage than normal because I had to put in like my entire like formal wear, which was a little bit of a pain. But of course, when you go to a wedding, you gotta do that. So I don't mind, but that was also a new experience for me too. I guess I should also mention that while I was there, for the most part, I slept well in Australia, but there were some times I had trouble sleeping. That was also due to me being a bit sick during some of it, again, catching a bit of a cold while I was there, affecting my sleep, but that's okay. On a lot of days, because a lot of my friends got sick, because of course, I'm pretty sure I caught the sickness from one of them, because one of them was starting to get sick as they were leaving for Australia. So I think it was a matter of time before we all got sick. So there were a lot of days where we would just kind of all sleep in a little bit, which was kind of nice. But of course, if we had something planned or booked, like the rock climbing, then we would make sure that we would wake up early. But it was nice being able to actually sleep in at our leisure a lot of times, because we had such a flexible schedule. We just had a list of things we wanted to do, and we weren't like rushed on trying to do it either, which was kind of good as well. So yeah, that was my trip. Oh yeah, while I was gone, Grand Blue Summer Leg Fest started. So I had to roll on my phone, and I decided to Spark. I usually have a couple sparks saved up for around summer, and this seemed like a good banner because there were a lot of new things. So I have to share with you the results of my spark. According to my notes, this is my 34th spark in Grand Blue ever. So I only spark in Grand Blue. I don't roll on normal banners. I only spark because I've been let down in the past. So now I just save, and I'm a mostly free to play player too. Don't think I'm actually spending money on these. So for those of you that play Grand Blue, you know what's up. If you're not, they released a few summer characters. They released Yukata Silva. Yukata Twain. I already have Yukata Silva. Yukata Twain. They released Summer Hecate and Summer Ragazzo and Summer Beelzebub as a summon. So that's a lot of new things. So I was like, okay, well, that's a lot of new things, so I'm going to roll. Also, Uriel was on rate up, as well as, I think, Kane, which is unfortunate for me, because I'm an Earth Lord. I already have enough Uriel weapons as well. So all these Uriel dupes are useless to me. And in fact, I could have used them if I got them like months ago. So first, I started rolling with my tickets. I usually start with I use the 10 draw tickets, I use the single draw tickets, I use the free draws, and then I move into the crystals. I almost got nothing with all my free draws. It wasn't until I started using my crystals that I actually started getting stuff. Hey Nix, welcome to the stream. Thanks for stopping by, it's good to see you. Once I started using my crystals, I started getting all sorts of stuff. I got so many Hecates. She would not leave me alone. And all I wanted was, well, not all I wanted, but by the time I got to my last few rolls, because we had like 3 or 4 days of free 10 rolls during this banner, right? So I did my first couple 10 rolls, and I was like, I can't spark until I've done my last free draw. Because it would suck if I finished my spark, and then I did my free draw, and then I got something that I sparked, right? So I needed to wait until the end. For those of you that don't know what sparking is, because it's kind of a Grand Blue originated term, it means you roll 300 times on the same banner, and then you get to choose something of your choosing if you don't get what you want. So I made it to roll number 280, and I had 2 more days of free rolls. And I had everything except for Ragazzo on the rate up. So I wanted to get Ragazzo on the roll so that I could use my spark pick to pick one of the grand characters I don't have, which in this case, I'm only missing Grand Percival and Grand Sandalphon Light. So I really wanted to get Ragazzo on a free roll and then pick up one of the grands I was missing from the spark. Unfortunately, it was not yet to be. Ragazzo did not come, so I had to pick him with the spark ticket. But summer characters are limited, so it's better to do that anyways. But it is unfortunate as well. But I got so many Hecates. So many Hecates. I also got Yukata de la Fille from the Star Gacha as well. She was not actually on the banner, but she was in my Star Gacha pick. So if you're wondering why she's there, that's why she's there. Not my first choice for my Star Gacha, but I'll take it. Hey Rurian, welcome to the stream. Thanks for stopping by. Yeah, I got so many Hecates. I was so angry every time I saw one. I was like, get away from me. I don't even like you. Stop sending me Hecates. You're not even a good character. So, yeah. That was my spark. That was my 34th spark. Yay. But I did get all the rate ups, so I guess I can't complain too much. Arc Knights also updated while I was gone, so I needed to roll, and so we had the limited character Shu, who is one of the Chinese New Year's characters, but Arc Knights is the Chinese servers ahead of us, right? So we get stuff later. So even though it's not Chinese New Year's, we have the Chinese New Year's event. So Shu is the limited character, rate up, along with Zuo Li, who is also rate up. And I wanted Zuo Li because he's cool, and a lot of my friends like him. I know he's not the best unit, but I like him thematically, and he looks cool. Shu is a good unit, but you don't necessarily need to go for her, other than the fact that she's limited. So I was rolling for these two, and Arc Knights for some reason is the only gacha game where I have a lot of luck, and I really wish I could get luck in Grand Blue, but no, it's always Arc Knights. I have like all the strongest units in Arc Knights. I have all the meta units, and I barely roll. Whenever a new unit comes out that is recommended to roll for, I usually get them in under 50. And so I don't have to ever spend money. So this time I had to roll a little bit more than usual, but I wanted Zuo Li. And I had to roll 120 times until I got him, which is actually not bad, all things considering, but for me, usually I get things under 50. The problem is, I got 4 copies of Shu while waiting for my 1 copy of Zoli. I got 4 copies of Shu, which is, I guess, not bad, because you can use the dupes in this case, but I was like, every time I saw her, I was like, I don't want you. I have enough of you. Which is funny because she's the limited character, right? So most of my friends rolling wanted her and kept getting Zoli. And they were like, I want the Shu. And I'm like, I have the opposite problem. I keep getting Shu and I want Zoli. Yeah, Shu needs to Shu. But I did end up getting them both. So I can't complain. And I still have plenty of free rolls left because I just save in that game. I play Arknights, but I stopped reading the story. But I do play it still. And so that is my story of my trip to Australia. I had a lot of fun. It was fun. I went at a good time of year during their winter, which was good. I got to see a lot of things. But honestly, I don't think I would go back. Unless I had a pressing need to or an event that I need to go to again. Because it was cool there. And again, I went to Brisbane. And of course, there's a lot of things to see in Melbourne and Sydney. But I don't feel like it's quite a long flight, and I don't feel like there's any attractions in Australia that really need to draw me. But I'm glad I went there and had a good time and saw some of the culture and some of the, nuances down there, and got to see my friends and got to, do the trip with my friends, which is the best part. But again, I don't think I would go back unless I had a really good reason to. I did go to the Gold Coast. I had a whole section of my slideshow about the Gold Coast. It was fun. I really liked it. Yeah, thank you so much for listening to my story. I'm glad you guys enjoyed. I do like doing these talking streams. I don't always have things to talk about, though. But, well, thank you for the stretch. I really appreciate it. But I'm glad I was able to share, and I've been excited to do this stream for a while. I just wanted to make sure I finished Unicorn Overlord before we got into it. Thank you for the Rain of Frogs. Oh, Shio, thank you so much for stopping by. It was good to see you. Thank you. Yeah, and if you are interested, this VOD will be up on Twitch and also uploaded to YouTube tomorrow. So if you want to peruse it back at your leisure and see things that you missed, it will be up there. But I had a good time. Saw a lot of cool stuff. I hope you learned something from this, maybe. And yeah, so for this week, again, for the rest of August, I'm not streaming too much. And that's intentional because I want to spend some time and do some things that I've been wanting to do, like get back into drawing, for example, and exercise more. So I'm cutting down on the number of streams I'm doing, but I'm still keeping up with series, so don't worry about that. This week, we are going to start Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga, which I really love that game. It's been a while since I played it. We're doing it because Mario and Luigi Brothership comes out in whatever it is, November. So I want to play this game so that any of you who have not experienced the Mario and Luigi series can experience it. And it's the only one of the series right now that you can still play on the Switch because it's available for the Nintendo Expansion Pass Online Plus. Because all the other games are on handheld consoles, and there's not an easy way to stream them unless you hook up your handheld consoles, which I do not have a way of doing that. Plus, I think Superstar Saga is one of the best of the series, so I'm really glad to play it. And also, Mario RPG games are just fun because they're just kind of goofy, and the battle systems are fun, and there isn't too much reading, so it's easy on my voice. So tomorrow, join me for the first day of Mario & Luigi Superstar Saga. Don't forget to, a week from today, we're doing our Final Fantasy XIV original character stream. So if you would like to submit your Final Fantasy XIV character, check my Twitter post and make sure you submit it before the end of the day on Thursday. I'll be going through it, and we'll basically be complimenting and celebrating your original characters and tier listing them for fun based on how well they'll put up a fight against my Final Fantasy XIV character. And so, and again, if your character is not about fighting or if that's not your thing, don't worry. It's more of an original character celebration stream than anything. And I just thought I'd make it Final Fantasy XIV themed since we just had a new expansion, and we also had the Arcadian raids, which is about fighting arenas, which is right up my alley. So there we go. Thanks for stopping by, everyone. Really appreciate it. Hope you enjoyed my storytelling. Let's find someone to raid. Let's go check up on Aru. he's been doing this really cool thing where he recreated a bunch of YouTubers in Samurai Warriors 4, and then he's basically like using his army of YouTubers to conquer Japan in like the Empire Conquest mode, which is really cool. So we'll drop in on him, and maybe you'll see some VTubers that you recognize. All right, see you next time, and say hi to Aru for me, and I'll catch you later. Bye, Froggy friends.